What's up, everybody? How's it going? Welcome back to the stream. It's Tuesday, so we're getting tactical, and I'm here with Fouchini, who's going to talk to us about Space Marines. Fouchini, how's it going, dude?
Nice. I'm loving life right now. Relax. It's not boiling hot because it's 9 o'clock at night. Can't complain.
Yeah, that does feel good. It's been hot here too. It's hot everywhere, I think, right now. It's been brutal. Absolutely brutal.
Pretty much.
Yeah, but you just came off like a whole weekend of 40k too, right? So you're knackered maybe?
Yeah, I am still recovering, and I'm getting old.
yeah. You're super old age.
Yeah. 22.
Yeah.
That's it.
Life's basically over, dude. That's it.
Pretty much. Yeah, I might as well just wrap up, man. Honestly, it's like a life insurance.
Yeah, there you go. But before you do, you have a little bit more Warhammer 40,000 in you, I think. Because I'm here talking to you today, and I've talked to you in the past. We actually have another interview with you about Space Marines and Iron Hands in specific on the channel from way back in the day. I think it was last year. But you're off of a 5-0 in a 46-player grand tournament that you first placed with Space Marines, which is pretty good because Space Marines are in a pretty awkward situation right now. But they've been kind of transformed by Warzone Nephilim because everybody's got new secondaries. The Space Marines have their own. Every chapter now has their own secondaries, so the scoring sort of meta game has been changed quite a bit. And I thought it was a good time to bring you on and talk about some Marines.
Yeah, sounds good.
So to start with, can you just give us a little bit of an intro of how you got started in 40k and sort of your past accomplishments up until this point?
Oh, how I got started into 40k. Well, I like pretty much anybody. I went to a Warhammer store one day and I was like, these are cool models. Oh, I really like to, just pay and collect and have a little bit of fun. It can't be too expensive, right? And then all of a sudden you're seeing each time you get a paycheck, you're just buying more models and you're like, oh wait, I'm playing guard. Because that's how correctly pro guys like, oh, because I already had a box of them. I was like, this should be fine. And I see myself like £200 in, like at this point like $250, and I'm like, oh great, I've got like 500 points. Can't even play a game yet. And I was like, great. It was like, And just over the years, I started getting into competitive Warhammer 40k, like about 6 to 12 months, like a half a year to a year just before COVID. So I've been in a hobby since 2018, so around just 4 years roughly, not too long. So I had guard mainly up to that point, and then during COVID, I wanted to branch out and just change a little bit and play Space Marines. So I would play like I've got Blood Angels. You name the Sanguinary Guard, I've got the Sanguinary Guard. I've got some nice customized Blood Angel characters, Lamartis, Dante, all of those. Really started to kick off, I guess you could say, my 40k competitive scene that just after COVID. When the events started to open back up in the UK, mainly with my Iron Hands that I've been perfecting over like the last year, during COVID on TTS. And thanks to that, thanks to a lot of the gameplay and the hours that I've spent practicing and refining the list and refining the playstyle of Marines, I got a list that I like, and I've been able to perform with it consistently during events. Like 2 weeks ago, how we mentioned, I won the recent GT at the Promazon.tv. And back of a 4-1 at Lead Super Major this weekend. So that's pretty much me, very, very, very quickly summarized in with my 40k career so far.
Yeah,
you can call it a career
for sure. Yeah, and I know you mentioned playing on TTS, and the reason that we're acquainted obviously is through the Discord server, because you play a lot over there, and it's been kind of an interesting experience having you, and there are a couple other kind of Space Marine diehards in that server, because we get a really skewed view of Space Marines. I think Iron Hands in specific, getting constantly stomped by Fouchini over here, like, and then going out into the wider world and having people be like, oh, Space Marines are terrible and Iron Hands are one of the worst sub-factions or whatever, and we're like, dude, you have no idea. You have no idea. So that's been fun, and it's been pretty awesome to see you like go back into in-person 40k and just like hit the ground running and absolutely start destroying people. Sure. It's good for us because I think it means that everybody who's playing on TTS and the Tactical Tortoise server, like, we're not scrubs. Other people also get destroyed by those freaking Vanguard veterans, dude. So so that's been good. And you play with Warmaster 40k, right? Is your gaming team?
Yep, that's my gaming team. Been with since I started 40k. Even before it was competitive. We became a bit more competitive as time went on, but that was the original team. Just a lot of us would go to events, just have a laugh. If anybody ever wants to talk to us or if you see us at an event, just say hello. Friendly, we're just a normal group of people that just likes to play and go to events together. But yeah.
Sick. Yeah, and so we put a link to the Instagram account for your gaming club down in the video description. So if you want to go check them out over there, you can see what Fouch is doing and all the events that he's currently showing people at. So there's a lot of those shots up there. But what we want to talk about today is obviously go over Space Marines in general a little bit later on. But we want to start with that DeploymentZone.tv Grand Tournament and talk about the list that you brought and the matchups that you played against, because I think this will give people a pretty good idea of what I imagine you think is kind of the cutting edge of Space Marine play right now, which is your Iron Hands list. So do you want to talk about the list that you brought to that event?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start off. So coming off from Natchman to Nephilim, there had to be some big changes. First things first, we had to take troops, which I know with all Space Marines out there, or every single Space Marine player all cried all at once when they realized we had to take 3 troop choices.
Yeah, to bring battalions, so you don't have to pay for the second
yeah. So all of a sudden because you always had started with unit forward deploy, but now you're just 200 points down the sink of stuff that doesn't really do much. So off the back of that, I was like, all right, I want my troop choices to actually be able to maybe not pull their weight up in points, but at least contribute to the game in some elements. So I've got my usual 2 characters, my Prime Master Lieutenant with Vox of Spirit and Man Rights of War. So a 9-inch aura of OBSEC, and we roll 1 to wound, which is critical because it means the castle, which is usually a small Space Marine castle with all of their buffs, extends, and it means you can actually stay on 3 to 4 objectives all at once with all of your buffs. And the second one is a Tech Marine, which is there to buff the Dreadnought that you'll see later on, with a Warlord trait for target protocols, which essentially means that I get 15 free rerolls throughout the course of the game for a CP. So you net profit 14 free rerolls, which is a massive boost over the course of the game when the game actually goes on. Then for my troop choices, I have 2 units of tactical Marines, I believe in this iteration, with grav cannons on because tactical Marines can actually take grav cannons, which I never knew until I actually saw that I had to take troops.
Surprise! There's a heavy weapon guy in there.
Yeah, pretty much. So that's what I did, and then I had a squad of Incursors. And then with my elites, I've got 2 squads of Vanguard veterans with sergeants with power fists and chain swords. Just a nice little bit of actually anti-armor of contempt. And then the other members had lightning claws and chain swords just to help clean up more than do the actual damage dealing in the list. Then I've got 3 redemptors with triple plasma and I don't remember. If I need to remember off the top of my head, Storm Bolters and Onslaught Gatling Cannons. Mm-hmm. And I know the entire list has Master Artisans and Word of Rage, so it means all the plasma are actually highly reliable and actually efficient. So when they shoot, even if they roll 2 or 3 shots, those shots to you will usually hit with the Iron Hand Super Doctrine and just reroll once. And also Master Artisans on top of target protocols. And then you have the
worst case scenario, you can Wisdom of the Ancients a hit reroll in there too.
Yeah,
right? Because
pretty much.
Tenant there to reroll the wound rolls.
Yeah,
anyway, so.
Exactly. So all of a sudden you have that consistency. You have the reroll once to hit, reroll once to wound on the BS3 platform with a Master Artisan reroll and a target protocol reroll. All of a sudden you see that those shots actually convert really well. Even these T8 and against Knights. Then you have the Little Dread that I like to call him Cunty because he is not pleasant to go against. So for PG ways, his name is Cunty. Now that's because he is a Relic Contemptor Dreadnought with Twin Volkai and Crack Missiles. But he is very different to other Dreadnoughts out there because he's a character. And if you're well acquainted with the character rule, you know that if you're 9 wounds or below, you cannot be targeted, which Contemptors are. So funnily enough, he cannot be shot. And with snipers not really existing, and even then, him being a durable character, being T7, 3-up save, 9 wounds with a 5-up invuln and -1 damage, it's pretty hard to shift. But what makes him really damaging is those.
Plus, he's next to a Tech Marine too, right? So even if you do have a sniper squad or whatever, and there's some eliminators that are plicking at him, that Tech Marine's just like.
Yeah, so he doesn't actually usually die unless I want him to die, which is funny. But then he's got a Warlord trait for 6s to hit on additional attacks. All of a sudden, you have this high volume damage Contemptor who cannot be targeted. Actually, every time he rolls a 6, he'll be hitting on 2s, reroll 1s, and 6s or additional shots that you hit on 2s, reroll 1s, and your crack missiles as well. And then you combo that with some of the stratagems that you have, such as mythological firepower. So we'll be putting back in the Devastator Doctrine, based on Armor of Contempt matchups. So he always gets those reroll ones, and always has that extra AP on the Volkites. Or you give him Merciless Logic, so every 6 he rolls to wound is additional wound. And with that much, as you can probably imagine, volume in the game, or volume in that such a Dreadnought, just goes out there and just eviscerates something all in one shot, or gradually if he's a very durable unit over the course of the game. And of course, for running out the list, you have a drop pod with 2 Devastators, with 2 Multi-Mortars and 2 Graph Cannons, which are highly efficient because they can calm down turn 1 opponents that make mistakes and just pretty much kill or eviscerate most things in the game. And then you have 2 Land Speeders with Multi-Mortars, just to help you score the Iron Hand secondary and give you a little bit more speed and maneuverability over the course of the game and earlier on. That pretty much rounds up the list, I think.
Yeah. So I think, sort of generally speaking, the kind of cool combination between the drop pod and Iron Hands, where there's a lot of factions that use drop Devastator squads pretty well. Iron Hands do it particularly well because if you drop it in turn 1, which you're usually going to be doing, they're going to be affected by the Super Doctrine, right? So all those heavy weapons ignore the move and shoot penalty and reroll their ones to hit. So they're sort of self-sufficient. You don't need a captain nearby. You don't need any more assistance because you have the +1 to hit from the Signum on the Sergeant, reroll ones to hit, and ignoring the penalty, and a floating reroll for Master Artisans. So they're like, especially those multi-melters are highly efficient.
The multi-mortars I've found always usually hit, even through -1, the Signum ones at the very least from my experience, just because even if they're -1 to hit and they don't come down turn 1, you still have essentially 4 multi-motor shots that will hit on 3s with reroll 1s with a Master Artisans, because you have Wisdom of the Ancients nearby as well, and then 2 shots that will hit on 4s. So on average, you're looking like still 4 to 5 melter hits from -1 to hit, so not coming down turn 1. On top of 8 grav shots, because you against some matchups you don't really use the grav as much. They're more for plinking off those wounds. So even then, I found the Master Artisans really helps in that category more than anything. So if you don't want to use your drop pod turn 1, you still have redundancy and rerolls to help you just kill stuff after turn 1, which is really nice. And if it's turn 1, you're pretty much guaranteed to almost hit with everything, which is really good. So because you're almost guaranteed to win against most things in the game as well because of their profiles.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think, to reiterate too, I think there's kind of an open question between a lot of Iron Hands players about the Relic and Tempter combo, because it does cost 3 CP, so it costs almost all of the command points that you are starting with.
It is half of my CPs. Yeah. And it is worth more than 3 CP because you are using more CP on him throughout the course of the game as well.
Right. Yeah. You probably spend at least 3 additional command points over the course of the game just putting Methodical Destruction on him, or Methodical Firepower.
Pretty much. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Or Wisdom of the Ancients, or some sort of buff on him.
Right. But all told, as you talked about before, this is probably, like, in my opinion anyway, I think it's probably the most concentrated damage output almost in the entirety of 40k. There's like some melee units that are going to do more than this guy, but he can do it from 30 inches away, and he can't be shot back because as long as he's being lookout sirred.
Correct.
And all told, it's going to be potentially, if every buff is active, right? The Tech Marine's given +1 to hit, so he's hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s from something that gives him reroll 1s. He's got 16 shots with the Volkites. Those are effectively exploding 6s. It's additional attacks on 6s. You have to roll to hit again, but you're hitting on 2, rerolling 1, so only 1 in 36 of those actually fails.
Pretty much, yeah.
And then if you Mercy's weakness him, he's also exploding wound rolls as well, right? So a 6 to wound becomes an additional AP1 2 damage hit and a mortal wound on top of that.
Every wound doesn't cause an additional mortal wound, unfortunately. That would be great.
Yeah, you get 2 damage saves and 1 mortal
pretty
wound
much
for every 6.
Yeah, correct. Which again he's the perfect target for because of the sheer amount of volume from his warlord trait.
Right.
So it's the best thing to put on in the entire Iron Hand, I guess you could say, armory about it, which is really good.
Yeah, and I know it's sort of in addition to that, I think a lot of the strategy, at least that you've kind of pioneered, is wombo comboing things together with Mercy's weakness, because Mercy's weakness is basically like a poor man's like Veterans of the Long War, right? Unless you have some other effect like exploding sixes to hit or rerolls involved, and then it gets even better. So I think you called at one point the Fouchini slash, which is putting that Mercia's weakness on a Vanguard Veteran squad that gets into melee with the Lightning Claws, because the Lightning Claws reroll their wound rolls, and then you can make those sixes explode. So you can do effectively the exact same combo in melee as well, where you charge in, you have Whirlwind of Rage, so you explode your sixes to hit into additional wound rolls. Those wound rolls re-roll, which means you get 2 shots at rolling a 6 to wound, which then inflicts 2 AP2 or AP3 1 damage swings from those Lightning Claws. I know the first time you did it on me, and 5 Vanguard veterans killed a Redemptor Dreadnought, I think through a Psychic Fortress. And I was like, well, that's a little funky, and you're like, no, that's below average. They should do more of the damage than that. Which is surprising the first time you see it, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I think everybody is always surprised by the contempt all the Devastators or the Vanguard Vets. The Vanguard Vets less so nowadays because there's a lot more profiles that are fine against them, but the first time people get shot by Devastators, because nobody really takes a drop pod, I think one of the best reactions you can get is, "Oh, okay, so that's both squads shot," and he told him, "No, that's just the one squad, and I've still got yeah, that was the one squad, and I've still got this cherub from that squad to shoot." Like, "Oh, okay, so you're not done." I was like, "All right, yeah."
It's just the I'm in danger meme, you know.
Yeah. It's like, oh. I think the best example of this, was about a month and a bit ago when I went to London Open. I played these a decent musical Death Watch list, like, you know, the standard Army of Renown, and I shot one Devastator squad with a cherub, and it was like, all right, that's and they killed, I think, pretty much the entirety of a kill team and another and like 4 Primaris bodies, and then he thought that was a Devastator shot. But then the other squad shot, and he was just in shock as he lost about 400 points with the Marines from just the Devastators, which was rough.
Yeah, those kill teams are not cheap. And I imagine that, especially like focusing on the heavy weapons with the huge AP values between Grav and Melta in the post-Armor of Contempt world is super helpful, right? Where
100%.
You see a lot of these power armor factions, and these guys just don't really care about Armor of Contempt that much.
No, 100%. The high AP and high volume from Grav in itself alone, 4 shots at strength 5, AP3, AP4. AP4 with Devastator Doctrine is just it really helps him punch through that Marine body. Even with Terminators in cover, you're still taking them to a 4 up, with most things will make them roll 3 up.
Right. Now, can you talk a little bit about secondary objectives with this list? I know Iron Hands probably have one of the most exciting secondaries out of the Codex Space Marine chapters, which is Cold Fury.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the best ones, I'll probably say one of the best, probably not the best, or out of the Marine secondaries, is Cold Fury. Which is basically Oath of Moment, since the Oath of Moment now got nerfed and you probably don't take it with Marines as often or at all, is you can only be scored with your vehicles, but if you have a vehicle within 6 of the middle, that's 1 victory point. If you kill a unit in shooting with a vehicle, that's another victory point. If you kill a unit in melee with a vehicle, that's another victory point. And if you have a vehicle within your opponent's deployment zone, that's another victory point. So you can score up to 4 per battle round, which is better than, as you can probably guess, Oath of Moment now, which can only be scored to 3 per battle round and has more restrictive secondary placement, having to be just core units. Whilst Iron Hands you don't have to be core, you just have to be vehicles. And because your vehicles are so good, like your Contempt is usually going to get you a point every single turn of killing something. Your Dreads will eventually push to the middle. You have your you have your land speeders that will get to your opponent's deployment zone turn 2, since they move 18 inches. So it just really synergizes really well. It might not be a 15 at times, however, it's definitely at least a 10 plus, which in the metagame right now, with how secondaries work outside of Sisters and both Necrons, you can probably imagine yourself. It's a consistent scoring secondary.
Yeah. It seems like most situations that you aren't incentivized to take no prisoners, you're probably going to be windmill slamming that Cold Fury down, especially if there's center battlefield objectives, right? So those Redemptors and those Land Speeders are going to be pushing there anyway.
Yeah, pretty much. It's always the game plan, right? Like if you have objectives in the middle, my Redemptors are eventually going to go there. Even if there isn't, because you go to the middle, you can essentially threaten all sides of the board. If you push one corner, the other corner of the board is safe from the Redemptors. If you go to the middle, you can always just branch out and expand from there, and you can push into your opponent's deployment zone if you have to. You can push into a side objective. You can hold the middle, and because those dreadnoughts are usually going to be OBSEC with Rights of War, and because they've got Armor of Contempt now, they're incredibly hard to shift, and it means your opponent has to overcommit resources in order to either flip the objective with not as much OBSEC nowadays, or if they do take OBSEC, they're not the most durable OBSEC that doesn't or isn't going to kill them unless it's Tyranid Warriors, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, like,
Warriors.
I think fine means something else in American. Over here in English, it definitely doesn't mean fine. But yeah, going to the middle is just usually a very good game plan, especially with how your list synergizes as a whole.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Now, so what secondaries are you looking at prioritizing otherwise? I imagine there's some banners in there. Probably.
There's always a banners in there, Trevi. Come on, Trevi. Come on. I think I've only not taken banners once. I took R&D just once ever, which was alright. But it just wasn't banners. It just wasn't banners. If I had banners, I could have scored 15. But R&D caps at 12. My philosophy usually when I try to get secondaries is how do I maximize my secondaries? And because at the end of the game, if you know you have the potential to score 15 with your secondaries while kept yourself at 12, and if my game plan usually approaches from tabling my opponent, what I putting out banners as an incredibly good secondary, because all of a sudden there's nothing to contest actually the board, and also banners got buffed now, so it means it actually comes down in the command phase, so they can't just take the objective and then hop off with like a fire and fade or like a charge off. It means they actually have to commit to that objective, which means I force my opponents to come to my threat ranges that I want them in. And all of a sudden, it actually means that I can place them down later on in the game. As banners as a late game secondary, that's usually my second secondary option. And my third one is either shock tactics or behind enemy lines. More so, usually shock tactics, because you want to flip objectives usually. It works really nicely with the primary, because if your opponent isn't giving you shock tactic points for you to retake objectives, all of a sudden it means you're actually winning on a primary front, which means you're eventually going to win the game. And even if you don't score 100, if you score 90 or an 80, that's completely fine, as long as you've won the game at the end of the day. So that's usually my three secondaries that I go for: Cold Fury, banners, and shock tactics. And eventually, sometimes behind enemy lines, these matchups that I'm really comfortable against.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess like if especially if your game plan's kind of predicated on already pushing for the middle, then you will have something to shock tactic, because your opponent actually has to fight you to prevent you from just running away with the game. Because I see a lot of less aggressive Space Marine armies play that shock tactics, and then on a 5 objective mission, their opponent just doesn't put anything in the middle, and they blank on a secondary, and then they lose. But if you're just putting 3 Redemptors in that center objective, I could definitely see that that's not that much of an issue.
Yeah, pretty much.
We did have some questions from the chat. I know people are wondering about Pascal X5, what the worst matchup for the Iron Hands list is, in your opinion. Is it Tyranid Warriors? Tyranid Warriors.
No, I mean, no, I would say it's Tyranid Warriors. Like, I think every time I play this Tyranid Warriors spam, I still table it, so it's not the end of the world.
It turns out that Relic Contemptor, just as an aside, has potentially the best profile in the game at shooting Tyranid Warriors, because they don't care about AP so much, so he doesn't. Him not having AP doesn't matter
until -1 damage comes into play. But yes, but we don't talk about -1 damage. It's fine.
But then they're not -1 damaging against the Redemptor Dreadnoughts, right? So one thing's gonna get -1 damage, and either it's the billion damage from the Relic Contemptor, or the Redemptor Dreadnoughts just laid up,
which is 3 damage. Yeah, correct. One of the worst matchups for Iron Hands that I had to pick. It's tough, right? Because I think of it from my perspective, and of course not to sound arrogant, but because I've played against a lot of matchups, I've got a rough understanding of how to approach every matchup. However, if I had to say the toughest ones would be Sisters, because they're very cheap, I can trade very efficiently and have really good secondaries. And Tyranids, just because of the Hive Tyrant interaction, more so than the Warriors, just because a Hive Tyrant can go in there, pick up a unit of Marines pretty much every single turn. So even if they don't commit turn 1, that's 4 Marines units dead without you having to trade anything for. And if you're playing a Space Marine army, you know that you're very elite and you really only start with like 13, 14 units. So you're just losing pretty much almost a third of your army without being able to interact with anything. It really, really hurts, because they still have the rest of the Tyranid army afterwards as well. So I'll probably say Tyranids and Sisters. would be the hardest matchups. I think that's what I would go for. Like those would be my two hardest matchups, Turners and Sisters.
I'm interested to see to hear what you think about Necrons because it feels like at least in my opinion, and I play Tyranids a lot, so I'm a little biased. But the way to beat Necrons is to be faster than them and kill them. But if you're a bunch of Redemptors that are probably maybe like the second favorite thing for the Silent King to shoot at and score points on, although I guess maybe he dies after he does that.
Yeah, that's kind of the issue. Yeah, that's kind of the issue. So if I see my opponents take Code of Conduct, for example, I will definitely bait a Redemptor because I would happily lose a Redemptor in order to kill a Silent King because then that's Code of Conduct just or Code of Combat just done. But to answer you for the Necron matchup, I have played it. I have taken some losses versus it. I have taken some wins against it. It's not necessarily Necrons in themselves that are the hardest things to approach. It is definitely, I'd probably say, the Catans. However, if you're able to actually maneuver around the Catans, because there's only so many places they could be at once, I find it's usually fine with these Necrons because they either give up easy grind if you want to take grind. They give definitely points for Cold Fury because you're going to kill a unit every single turn with a vehicle, even in melee, so that's 2. Necrons themselves aren't really killy. Like they do have the damage output, but they're not necessarily outside of Silent King. They don't have a way to punch through vehicles efficiently. Catans don't really punch through, especially if they're taking Deceiver. But if they're taking the planes, then all of a sudden it takes both planes to potentially kill a Redemptor. I've had it where both planes have shot Redemptor, I haven't killed one. So that's just a bad trade for them. But in the Necron matchup, you can just damage them off the board as long as you still take the mission into consideration. Because if you just think about tabling them without scoring the mission, which works against other armies, these Necrons, you'll find that actually they can still catch up on the scoreboard. Because you can kill 1,000 points of Necrons, but if you're not denying them primary, or at least trying to deny them secondaries, you'll find that they can still run with the scoreboard. But I'd say Necrons are definitely up there, but I wouldn't say they're the hardest ones to approach, definitely. It'd still be Warriors, well, not Warriors, but Tyranids and Sisters for sure.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And it definitely feels like Necrons, as weird as it is in a lot of matchups, and you know, again, I'm speaking from a Tyranids perspective, but it sounds like also the way it goes with Space Marines too is that as weird as it sounds, because it seems like the most straightforward faction, like it just comes down to how effective your opponent is at playing a scenario game. And if you're able to shut them off of scenario for long enough, they will eventually lose out. So the Necron player really has to be like on point to get a really consistent win rate out of that faction, it feels like to me right now.
Oh, for sure. I don't think Necrons as people make them out to seem like just walk forward and score secondaries. I can see how they can do that vs like in the mid tables. However, when you get to the top tables, people have a more fundamental and deep understanding of the game, so they know what they have to do in order to actually beat it. However, I would say a skilled Necron player was definitely something to watch out for, since they also understand the game and they know what they have to do to actually win with a far superior secondary game. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you can just, at least in my experience, you can just shell shock the Necron player psychologically with the sheer amount of damage you can do. Because I've just had it where turn by turn 2, I've killed Silent King, 2 planes, and like I've killed like 1,000 points worth of Necrons, and my opponent is just in shock of the damage because it's not something they usually experience, and you can almost run away with that score just because also your opponent starts to make mistakes because they're not thinking in the right state of mind, so because of the damage you've just inflicted upon them. So that definitely helps in that aspect, and it also helps against other matchups. But these Necrons, where they have to be on point with their scoring, it really helps in that case, because when they start to crumble, they really start to crumble.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So we wanted to move on and talk about your games at the recent Dropzone TV tournament, the GT that you took down, 46 players. And we have your matchups here. Nice Best Coast pairings over here. Thank you for posting your list. Took us a little while to find it for some reason today, but here we are. And round 1, you were up against Black Templars. So we had a mirror match round 1. How did this game go?
Well, I believe I went first. However, he didn't have many things in the opens, but I killed just like I killed. I think I only killed like 5 Terminators and 2 units of Incursors and did some plink damage to some Van Vets. But it was basically a slow grind where he couldn't really kill me because I just stayed outside of Eradicator range with my Dreadnoughts, and I just outscored him on both primary and secondary, just because Cold Fury was really helped. Well, actually, sorry, in that game I didn't take Cold Fury. I took no prisoners because my game was to eventually table him, which did happen. But it was just a slow grind. With him finding he couldn't actually deal with all the threats at once because he was melee, and Space Marine melee got considerably worse, especially in Black Templar's case. And also because he had the O for the 5-up invuln, he didn't benefit from cover, so the Contempt that was actually doing good damage vs all of those intercessors with 3-ups. Yeah, it was not like it was pretty much a runaway game. Just because the drop pod also just helps in the matchup with the high AP, high volume, and high damage. It's just not pleasant playing Iron Hands vs the Marine Mirror, just because it's just sometimes really hard for your opponent to actually get in the game.
Yep. And what vow did he take in that matchup? Do you remember?
He took the vow for the 5-up invuln, and like he doesn't benefit from cover. So that's what I mean. Like the Contempt was able to actually shoot.
I guess that's fair. Yeah.
And they wouldn't get cover, so they'd have just 3-ups, and they would just
makes the Devastator slightly worse. But that Contemptor goes absolutely ham.
Yeah.
He's punching through cover. Yeah.
Pretty much, which is what happened.
Fair enough. All right, you heard it here first, folks. Grab cannons and melt to get against other Space Marines.
Yeah, they're funny enough. They are. So Strength 8 AP 5 turn 1 is pretty good.
Yeah. So round 2, you're up against Drukhari. It looks like this is like sort of a classic Drukhari list.
Yeah, that was my teammate. Probably the
team kill.
Yeah, it was.
That's early.
Yeah, it was. That was probably like one of the most fun games I had the event. Because it was just so close. Because I mean, the models on the board didn't reflect how close the game was.
Mm-hmm.
Like Julio was an excellent player. He always had me thinking, and probably the closest I came to clocking out in a game, it's because I had to spend so much time just thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And since you know me, Trevor, you know clock's never usually an issue, but I genuinely thought for a moment that I might clock out here. But yeah, no, it was a great game. I definitely say some misplays on his part and some good dice rolling on my part definitely helped there. And just being able to basically trade and go in second, getting that primary lead at the end of the game was definitely a massive contribution to why I was able to take the game away. Tough game, hard fought. Definitely the person I didn't want to run into until the finals at the very least. But it was out of the way early, which was nice.
Yeah, I do remember pretty vividly back in the day that the Relic Contemptor, when Drukhari were the scourge of the metagame, the Relic Contemptor was a pretty key tool in that matchup because it matched up so well against T3 infantry, right? Just get vaporized, but also it can kill raiders really efficiently because it's Strength 6 versus T6, which is pretty nice.
100%, which is what happened in the matchup. A unit of Homoxats came out, which is one of the most durable units for Drukhari. Like, an Ivan, Powerful Pain, and the Contempt that was just like, okay, you're now not going to exist, which is what happened, which is really funny. And the Dreadnoughts you also find with Armor of Contempt, where actually made considerable amount of 6-up saves via the Ravager, where previously the Ravager would just go through and basically evaporate a Dreadnought. You'd roll 1 or 2 6s, all of a sudden your Dreadnought surviving for another turn or 2, so you can just heal it up over the course of the game, which is what happened. I lost one Dreadnought, and then the other one kept getting shot by a Ravager, and it kept getting healed, and it kept making saves. So Armor of Contempt really made a massive difference here.
That makes total sense. Yeah, those Dark Lances are maybe like the most inconsistent weapon I think I've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean,
wild.
You'd think that, but with what's it called, Black Heart, with the one reroll, like it does have the consistency a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, the moment you go through -1 to hit, like even then it's like 4 of a rerolls. It's not great if you don't have other forms of rerolls.
Yeah, you're just taking a bunch of coin flips in a row.
Pretty much. And I think the funniest part was when Free Grotesque couldn't kill a land speeder because it was strength 5 is T6 and an armor of contempt. So they did like 5 wounds and then just 4 up saves. I just made 3 of them, so land speeder just survived, which was really funny.
Brutal. Yeah, I remember I played a game. It was pre the new Tyranid Codex. It was a couple months ago against Drukari, and it was like a bunch of raiders and a Ravager, and I think they converted by the end of the game a single Dark Lance out of probably 18 shots. I was like, well, yeah, it was through Venom Thrope, so minus would have hit, and then I had Maliceptor, so it was minus 1 to wound effectively too, and yeah, it was bad for them. So that puts you into round 3, where you are up against Death Guard.
Yeah. Also,
fair enough.
One of my teammates in the end. Yeah, I mean, I can summarize this game in. Yeah, it was rough. Like, he had Morty. I went first. I shot my Dreadnoughts. Morty wasn't there, and my Devastators didn't shoot anything despite coming down 10-1. And that was pretty much the game from there. The Devastators were in a position where they could shoot the mid objective and the side objective that was moved into the open. So they just stayed there pretty much all game. And the Dreadnoughts moved forward since they essentially had no way to actually deal with the Dreadnoughts when Morty is now dead. Because Death Guard melee is not great. It's not bad, but it's not great since they didn't have all the Plague Marines.
Yeah, outside of Death Shrouds, it's kind of okay.
Yeah, pretty much. So the Dreadnoughts just pushed up into the middle, and then the Terminators came down from his turn 2, and then my Dreadnoughts and his Terminators had a go with my Devastators, and it was 10 Terminators just getting wiped in the turn. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but that's what happens. Like, -1 damage, toughness 5, doesn't matter. Beast Dreadnought, flat 3 plus D3 damage, right. Strength 12.
Yeah, you have enough that you just kill them in 1 hit. You force them on the Reborn save, even through armor contempt.
Pretty much, yeah. Which is what happened. Like, the ones that survived the shooting, which wasn't many. The Dreadnoughts just charged and then allowed them to slingshot to then charge into the back objective the following turn, which is pretty much how that game went down.
Yeah. That sounds about right. So that puts you to undefeated going into the semifinals. And you were up against Imperial Knights.
Yeah.
Imperial Knights. I have a sneaking suspicion that Grav drop pod did a lot of damage.
So it was supposed to. So this is a funny thing. So I basically deployed, and then I went and then I deployed Madres and pretty much my entire army to shoot the bigger knight if I got first. So that's what I did. I lined up. I didn't have many shots at many other armigers because I wanted to kill the big knight more than anything. And then I was like, all right, cool. Let's just shoot my Contemptor into the big knight and just see how he does, and then the rest can pick him up and, like, finish off the remaining wounds. And then I just spend 1 speed for a merciless logic, and then my Contemptor with the crack missile does 5 damage, nothing too crazy. Like, he failed a save, I just rolled a 5 for the damage. I was like, okay, sure. But then I do around 33 damage of the Volkites, and then
all right.
Fair enough. He just the knight just wasn't there anymore, and I was like, oh
yeah.
I didn't really line up.
Yeah, even a rotated ion shield doesn't save you against just AP1.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything.
No, and then I realized, oh wait, I didn't really line up my rest of my army to shoot into many other baby knights, and because the baby knights were also -1 to hit, so I was like, okay, well, shit.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of baby knights, right? So that was a mistake on my part. But then I still shot some baby knights, and I killed 3 turn 1, so it wasn't terrible. Could have killed more if I positioned slightly better. However, I went first, killed that. It was actually a really close game, but not points wise, but model wise, because Imperial Knights do a lot of damage and they can become virtuous, and so they have all of the rerolls and they have the obsec, and they can do the damage, and the melters were chewing through the Dreadnoughts, and so with the +1 to wound the Helverins. With the end of the game, I had a Contemptor and 1 Redemptor left, and some tactical squads, and I think 1 Vanguard vet left at the end of the game, so not much at all. Just from the sheer amount of damage they were able to do. and the -1 damage with the durability as well. So all of a sudden, my Contemptor's damage 1 against him, so he's not. It takes twice the amount of effort to actually kill one. But that's how that game went. He pushed he pushed my objectives. He was taking my objectives, just gaining loads of honor points. He was virtuous. He was like, I'm 8 models up sec now. I'm like, okay, great. 5 was enough, but sure. It's like, oh yeah, I can auto 6 for like this dice roll for my knight per knight. I was like, oh, okay, that's really good actually. It's like, yeah, I'm just gonna pass the save. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm gonna charge. I'm like, cool. I'm gonna Overwatch. He's a 6. I was like, oh shit, that's not good. So that happened, and I was like, oh, this is actually. There was a point where I was genuinely concerned. I was like, I might lose this game, but luckily, I had done enough damage turn 1 that I was able to slowly start to run away with the game, which is usually what happens in the matchup. Just the sheer amount of damage that you can do if you go first or second, even if they get the buffs up.
Right.
But yeah, that was pretty much what had happened there.
Yeah, as long as you have good hiding places for the dreadnoughts, it feels like your army, because there's a lot either that's character protected, right, because of the Relic Contemptor, or is in reserve in the drop pod, that there's not really anything for your opponent to sink their teeth into, even if they go first, and even if they are knights, which have the armatures, which are relatively fast and have good ranged attack, so they can often squeak around corners and things like that. But if the Redemptors just sort of null deploy and all the infantry is hiding, then there's nothing they can do on turn 1. Does that sound right?
Yeah, pretty much, right? Because if they go first, they get the defensive buffs up. However, they're pretty defensive enough being further back. Knight players have the misconception of the closer they get to you, the better it is for them. However, the closer Knight armies get to me means the closer they are to getting within Melter range, for example, or being within all of my reroll ranges, or being in Combat of Dread, or being charged of Vanguard vets. So it's actually a double-edged sword for them. Whilst I have enough models that I can no deploy, so that if I do happen to go second, I don't lose any resources that help me in the matchup at all.
Yeah.
So I still can get to conserve about 40,000 points if I go second, and if I go first, they don't have the 40,000 points to play with, which is usually what happens.
Yeah, I think that's that's a pretty good point too, right? In any Space Marine subfaction, and especially when it's in like Iron Hands that has such a balanced variety of damage output, where you want to be able to build yourself as kind of a hybrid gun line where you have those ranged attacks and you have the punch to force your opponent to engage into you, but you can't do so at the expense of your melee, because you can force your opponent into a situation where they have to deal with something like the Relic Contemptor, and in order to do that they have to get to grips with it because they can't shoot it, but just doing that runs them into range of the Vanguard veterans, and then you get to hammer them anyway.
Pretty much, yeah. Or in range of the Dreadnoughts, and Dreadnoughts are really good at killing armatures, because apparently AP4 turn 3 onwards and flat 3 plus D3 damage is pretty good against killing Knights. Who knew?
Yeah, shocker. Newsflash. So that puts you into the final round, and that was against the other variety of Knights, Chaos Knights. But this one was the variety build with Abaddon in it.
Yeah, Abaddon was a simple farmer just taking his dogs on a walk.
I know there was a question in chat about dealing with Abaddon.
This is going to be like the prime example then of how to deal with Abaddon.
Perfect.
So in the matchup, again, I'm no deployed, so if I went second, I was going to lose absolutely nothing. But I went first, and so you know how the Contemptor last game was like, I'm going to one-shot this big knight. In this game, it was like, you know what, I'm going to leave the Armager alive on 1 wound. That's giving everybody their 1/-1 toughness. or I'm just like, great. So the Contemptor shot didn't even kill an Armager. I was like, you know what, I just really wanted this Armager to live. He did like 3 wounds with his Rollcat, so I was like, okay, sure, good stuff. But what's it called? I killed, I think, 5 Armagers turn 1 despite that, so it was still alright. No explosions, unfortunately. And I had basically positioned in a way where I went for maximum damage. So as you can probably imagine, so I went there for max damage, so I was able to handle that and do that.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting about the War Dog lists, and it's kind of similar to the Imperial Knights list that are that have the one big knight to give out the bondsman abilities, is that obviously they can't hide in the big knight list because there's a big knight that can't be obscured. So you need true line of sight blocking terrain, which usually you can't get like good enough to actually hide him. So he's exposed. But the War Dog Armiger list and the Armiger spam list are just so big, like so physically large, that they just run out of obscuring terrain.
They have such a massive footprint. Yeah, I mean, like that's what it was. I think he had like 4 knights that were actually properly obscured, and like even then that was a good amount. I was like, oh damn, that's a good amount. But he just ran out of space just because of their footprint, and because the way they deploy, they actually have very few drops. So I can just put down my troop choices, which are useless, and then I can be like, all right, I know where to place the rest of my army now, because essentially what really happens is they place down 5 drops. That's their army. I'll place down my troop choices and like some speeders, and then I can put my dreadnoughts in positions where they're in a position to not get shot if I go second, but able to get shots if I go first. So what happened there is at turn 1, I just put the Devils. I was just like, cool, drop pod in the middle, score me the called Fury points. Then Devastators go for max damage, go for the what's it called, motor range damage, whatever. Even if I lose them next turn, like if they charge me next turn to try and kill me, my dreadnoughts charge and kill them back, which is what happened. And Abaddon didn't have as many dogs to screen him now, which is the main thing, and that's how I got around him. I killed the dogs that were screening Abaddon, and then I just did 3 damage to Abaddon, because when you have such high volume of shooting, high damage and high AP, you can do 3 wounds to Abaddon like it's nothing. And then what happened is that I went in, charged, killed that knight, and then Abaddon charged me next turn, absolutely eviscerated the dreadnought, did like fucking 27 damage or something. It was just dead. I was just like, mate, you don't need to ever. Yeah, I was like, you don't ever need to roll Abaddon against me ever again. I'll just pick up wherever it is. I was just like, he was like, he's already dead. Like the moment Abaddon looked at him, he was already dead. But that's the thing about Abaddon, is he only moves 6 inches, so you can pretty much telegraph where he goes. Like, he can advance and charge for a turn, but that's just in the command phase, so you can still kind of dictate where he goes. So I filtered Abaddon in there. I was like, alright, cool. Abaddon's now going to murderize these squads, which is what happens. But I'm going to lock him in with my what's it called, tactical marines. So I just made, I boxed him in. I sort of 3 inches, so he couldn't heroic, and he killed the what's it called, drop pod. And then essentially what happened from there is like I just finished off the rest of the armigers. Vanguard West charging his deployment zone back there, and Abaddon just kept him boxed in because he can't fly. He only moves 6 inches. He can't advance and charge anymore. Went there, killed some infantry. Then all I did was I shot Abaddon, did 3 wounds, and then I charged them and I finished him off with a dreadnought. And it was happy days.
Yeah. It sounds like both Abaddon and the Catan you were talking about earlier, having the Redemptor dreadnoughts does help give you kind of an outlet for those phase cap models, because you have a unit that just by itself with no other input can deal damage in 2 phases. So all you need is one opportunity to shoot them, one turn before the Redemptor Dreadnought goes in, and the Redemptor Dreadnought will probably convert enough attacks to deal 3 damage, and then the charge should do it. Obviously, like, Mark of Siege makes things a little bit awkward, but
correct. But Mark of Siege is but Mark of Siege is only like once per turn or something, so you can bait out of the shooting, because you just have so much shooting that he's just going to take the 3 damage. Yeah. And if you really want to, you can shoot a Contemptor there and just do the 3 mortal wounds anyway. So it's regardless, it's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just been my experience of it at the very least.
Yep. Now, obviously, this wasn't a Chaos Knights list with the big knights, and I think we don't see quite as many of those anymore now that Abaddon is kind of around. But one thing that I do find is interesting, and I'd be interested to hear if you agree, is the approach to like target priority against the two different knight varieties, because Imperial Knights are really like predicated on the bondsman abilities from the big knights, whereas the Chaos Knights are really bad at holding territory without their war dogs. So it feels to me like against the Imperial Knights, you want to be able to, exactly like you did in your game, you want to be able to take out that bondsman knight as quickly as possible. But against the Chaos Knights, like pruning the herd, the pack, I guess, of the war dogs, and clearing the ones that can contest your objectives is like the most important thing.
100%, and mainly because, what's it called, Imperial Knights, are good because of their buffs and the defensive buffs they're able to put on them, like Bondsman, like you said. But Chaos Knights just get better as the game progresses. From their like dreads, all of a sudden they can switch off your obsec. They can be -1 to hit and shooting or melee. They're all of a sudden like if they do certain favors, they can be trans hit man. They can be called or be trans wound man, -1 a wound, or like it can be -1 damage. So Chaos Knights, you really want to do as much critical damage as them as humanly possible earlier on before they can get all of their layered buffs on. But Imperial Knights can have those buffs from the Bondsman, so they can have it from the Big Knight or the Helverin. So if you're able to actually nuke that Big Knight, all of a sudden those Knights are a lot less durable, and they don't get better as the game progresses. Sure, they can get virtuous, but they can also by gaining honor, but they can also lose honor. So against Imperial Knights, the Big Knights are definitely the big priority, the number one priority. Since if you're able to nuke them, you're able to nuke a lot of the defensive buffs you're able to get with the Bondsman. But against Chaos Knights, you really like if they have the bigger Knights, you still want to shoot the little Knights, since those are the Knights that will get considerably better as the game progresses. And those are actually going to be the ones that cause you problems as the game progresses. Whilst the Imperial Knights, realistically, if they're 5 models obsec or 8 models obsec, you don't really care Space Marines. You're going to have 1 model obsec with a Dreadnought, or 5 models with a squad. So they don't actually change that much.
Your goal is to have 1 model on that objective and no 30 models.
Exactly. I mean, like I just want to kill them as fast as humanly possible, which thankfully with the profiles that I take is hyper efficient into them with high AP, high damage, high volume.
For sure, yeah, and especially like there's a lot at that strength 8-ish profile. Like there's all the meltas, there's all the missile launchers, and the plasma guns, the plasma cannons off of the Redemptors too. Not to mention the fact that the Redemptors are strength 14 in melee, right? So they get to wound on 2s against the armatures.
Oh yeah, strength 14 in melee is absolutely perfect. And since you're most of the time you're gonna have like Wisdom of the Ancients, you could be hitting on 3s, reroll 1, 6s explode with a Master Artisan reroll, so you're like gonna hit with more than the attacks than you have. Then you're gonna win on 2s, reroll 1s, you're gonna be AP4, they're not gonna get a save. They're gonna be like, alright, cool. I can pretty much kill 2 Knights here, 2 attacks here, 3 attacks here. Get cramping.
yeah. It is funny because armatures are like they're so often taken in these big packs, but they are one of the most satisfying profiles to attack. I know back in the day I had playing Tyranids in the 8th edition codex. I would have the Hive Tyrants, the Tech Hive Tyrants with murderous sides that were strength 7, so they would win them on 4s, but you were full rerolls, and then it was just AP 4 damage, so 3 conversions killed one of them. And if you did 4 damage on the way in with your smites, you could get 2. Kill 2 and then run away. And you're just like, it's like I described in a video that lining up your attacks with like a profile that they match up really well against is like playing a game of Tetris, where you get the long like 4 brick, the right exactly when you need it. And
it's just so satisfying, isn't it? Like you're just like, all right, cool. It's like I think it's just satisfying when you have high AP that doesn't go into an invuln. It's the same thing like when you shoot like Redemptor. Like so, I had it over the weekend where I just shot a Redemptor with like 5 shots, 5 hits, and 5 wounds into a hammerhead, and it was like, oh, you don't have an invuln, don't you? He was like, nope. So that's just 15 damage. I was like, okay. I was like, nice. Just shooting high AP into just an armor save that doesn't get a save is just so satisfying.
Yeah, I've been playing Hive Fleet Kraken for Tyranids for a while, and getting to AP4 or AP5 with the Hive Tyrant, so he attacks that Space Marine, and it just dies. There's no 6s, you're not rolling anything. Just pick up your models, please.
There's no more contempt. Get out of here. You're dead.
Feels good, man. Well, with that, I guess we can move on. So first of all, congratulations on winning the GT with Space Marines.
Thank you.
Not a lot of Space Marine 5-0s going up. We get them occasionally, but one thing that was really hilarious for that, I think that 2-week period, was that looking at the statistics for that, for those 2 weekends, there was 1 4-1 Iron Hand, I think the week after you, and then you had the 5-0. And so if you looked at the statistical breakdown, Iron Hands were at a 90% win rate because they went 9-1 between a 4-1 and a 5-0, and they were the
perfect,
clear and away the best subfaction in the entire game for that weekend, which was pretty good. So congrats, but Iron Hands aren't the only Space Marine chapter that you've played in your long and storied career as a Space Marine captain.
Yeah.
So what we want to do now is take a little bit more of a holistic approach and talk about Space Marines as a whole faction, and do some discussion and do a little tier list, some tier list action.
No, everyone loves a tier list.
Hell yeah.
Let's go.
Now, I know that there was a question in chat that I noticed that I can't find now, but somebody was asking about how you felt. SCQQ was asking how you felt about the interaction between Space Marines and terrain, and I know you're very opinionated about about your terrain format that you play with Space Marines. So can you talk a little bit about that, about how I guess Iron Hands in specific and in more general the different Space Marine sub-factions get impacted by different terrain formats?
Yeah, sure. So I believe that different Marines become significantly worse or differently better depending on the amount of terrain that you have. Luckily for Iron Hands, because they are predominantly shooting but still have melee, do fine on even heavier boards. Maybe not the super heavy boards. They still do relatively well. However, like on boards such as like the US Open, different types of Marines like Blood Angels are considerably more prominent, because you have to get so close to actually be able to shoot because of the big bases that they have. There's not many real shooting angles, and you realistically need to move around 14 inches or be elder in order to actually shoot. Like even Knights will occasionally struggle to shoot on those boards, and find it easy to get shot. Funny enough, so I'd say in the UK and Europe with WTC terrain, UKTC terrain, and just a lot of the boards that we play here in Europe, Iron Hands are able to leverage both the shooting and the melee aspect, since it's dense enough where there's specific firings that you can shoot through, but it's also not light enough where you can just get shot off the board. You can still hide if you want to hide. You can still get into certain jump points if you want to get into certain jump points, which Iron Hands really benefit from, and other Marines as well, like Blood Angels predominantly, as they're currently the second best Marine or best Marine in the USA, just because of they predominantly play with US Open boards over there, and Blood Angels being able to just move into the middle, not get shot without the opponent coming super close to them, and then charge next turn really helps them. So I definitely say Blood Angels in the States are slightly better, unless it's place terrain, then it's iffy, like a bit iffy. But over here in Europe, I'll definitely say that a more balanced list with shooting and melees, which is currently Iron Hands at the moment, or other Salamanders variants that you can see from WTC, especially in the French team with Olivier, that those mixed combat armies with shooting are actually able to perform really well on those terrain boards, at the very least.
Yeah. So I guess it kind of makes a lot of sense for the entirety of the Space Marine subfaction, which is build is very much the jack of all trades of 40k, where like you have very good shooting, but also you can back that up with good melee, and that means that you're most benefited, especially in a balanced subfaction, from having a balance of terrain, right? Where I have to imagine that if you were planning on playing a bowling ball, right, then suddenly you're going second against somebody with a bunch of guns, and you're like, well, this isn't great, you know. Redemptor Dreadnoughts are hard to kill, but if you're looking down the barrel of a bunch of hammerheads going first, like you're gonna fall apart. So you like we said before, right? You can null deploy enough that you don't lose a shooting battle, but you're still enough melee that you can take advantage of the terrain that is there. So you really want, especially for Iron Hands, kind of a I guess a middling quantity of terrain, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. You don't want something too light, or else you can just steamroll your opponent, and it's not really fun on both cases. But you don't want something super heavy or super dense, because then not just Iron Hands but other gun lines just become redundant whatsoever. Like they just become completely redundant, so they can't shoot. So all of a sudden it's just melee armies, and the best melee subfaction right now for Marines is Blood Angels. So Blood Angels will just rise to the top naturally, and you'd maybe have Space Wolves up there as well. White Skulls don't exist.
Sure.
Let's find that out there.
Well, it sounds like we're tier listing already. So let's pull our tier list up over here, and we'll get it going. I think we might want to give that a zoom. All right. So we have the list that I have out right now. It does have a couple sub factions. There are Crimson Fists and Imperial Fists. I don't. I guess you could give me your opinion on this. I don't know if there's like too much of a distinction between like Flesh Tears and Blood Angels and Crimson Fist and Imperial Fist that we really need to consider them separately. But obviously we can if you feel like it.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, some have special characters. So like, I mean, especially Blood Angels and Flesh Tears. So like, Blood Angels are good, Flesh Tears are not. If that makes sense.
Sure.
It's like you don't have Dante.
Yeah.
You don't have +1 to advance and charge.
Right.
Which is pretty useful.
Yep.
And one of the reasons why you play, Blood Angels.
For sure. Yeah, I think honestly, I kind of feel Crimson Fist a little bit more than Imperial Fist, to be honest. I think they're like situational +1 to hit subfaction or chapter tactics pretty good, but I don't know if that actually like pushes them, above Imperial Fist anyway.
I don't think.
So.
I think that's like putting a band-aid on a gushing wound that's been bleeding for about 10 weeks. It's like
we got lipstick on a pig
like,
here.
Yeah, it's nice, barely, and it doesn't do anything. It's like, which is rough because they do have some nice characters like what was it called, like Pendro Cantor, which is actually like one of the best Space Marine characters. He's just stuck with Crimson Fist, which is a sucky part.
Right. All right. So should we start talking about Blood Angels? I know you mentioned that Blood Angels you felt were the best melee-focused Space Marine champion.
Yeah, 100%.
So does that put them at the top of the tier list, or?
Yeah. So quick disclaimer though.
Around high A-ish?
I think they'd be in S, but quick disclaimer: I don't think any Marines are currently S tier compared to the meta. However, compared to other Marines, I definitely place Blood Angels as S tier, just from the Death Company, the Sanguinary Guard. And Sanguinary Guard, I like just the special units that they have in line with their secondaries, and the sheer amount of damage they can just hit you with is like really good, especially in combat with the speed. So I definitely put them into S tier for that.
Yeah. I think their secondary objective plays really strong.
Really strong.
Basically, like their entire list of secondaries is just like sort of phenomenal. And Relentless Assault, their secondary that scores for getting into your opponent's deployment zone, feels like it's like sort of an unscorable gimmick. But every time you see a really good Blood Angels player take to the field with it, they max that thing out immediately.
It's so good. So it's like 4 points. It's a better behind enemy lines. It's like I just need 1 unit. It's 4 points, and if my opponent's and my deployment zone, they're dead. So it works perfectly for me. Nice.
Yeah.
For sure. And then the Death Company secondary as well. So like if your opponent's not careful, you can send Death Company. You have 3 units of Death Company. You send 1 out. It charges in. It kills 2 units. Then it dies. All of a sudden, that 1 unit scored you 5 points. And if you've gone first, it has scored you another 4 points for Relentless Assault. So that 1 unit has scored you 9 secondary points, which is you're like, all right, that's just really good. So it just scores you those points, and it's like all of a sudden like you start to realize that okay, Blood Angels are killing me here, and they're scoring a lot of points going along. Not Necron type of points, but still a lot of points, which is really good.
Yeah, it's enough that you feel like you have to push, but pushing into a Blood Angels army just means that they kill you quicker. So.
It's always terrifying when you're like, oh, I need to push, and you're like, I need to push these Blood Angels. I'd rather not. And even
boys,
me.
It's time to go for the center objective, and that ruin like right off the center objective just has 30 Sanguinary Guard in it. You're like, well, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe don't.
do I really go in? Yeah. Do I need primary? Do I need primary this game?
Yeah. And so we said Flesh Tearers don't have the same access to special characters, and the chapter tactics a little bit worse, right?
No.
So probably like I don't know, maybe A-ish. They mostly do the same stuff. They just like.
Yeah, I mean they don't have like Dante, right? I mean, I think one of the main reasons why people play Blood Angels is not just for the Sanguinary Guard, but for the +1 to advance and charge. It really helps out with your speed.
Right.
And additionally, because you're a successor, you don't actually have access to all of the Blood Angel, the real Blood Angel, what's calling them like relics. Like you don't, I don't think you have access to Wrath of Bull, do you? You play like you have to pay another CP for it.
Yeah. So I think it is an actual chapter relic, not a special issue.
Yeah. So all of a sudden that drops it down, because one of the main reasons why Blood Angels are so good is that they can move 14 inches. But if you can't do that and you don't have +1 to advance and charge, and you don't have the special characters, so you have to pay. So you have to pay extra points for characters. I think like all of a sudden that actually they're not A. I think they're barely B, like anywhere between C to B, because you have one good character, but he doesn't really do much. He moves 6 inches.
Right.
So I think like a B tier maybe would be where they would go. Maybe. Maybe lower.
We're talking ourselves down. We'll keep it up.
Yeah.
We'll see how our bell curve looks at the end. But yeah, that makes total sense. Now that you put it that way, like Warzone Nephilim is a lot about the format's a lot about command point economy, right? And so you lose your character that regenerates, that gives you CP back, who's Dante.
Yeah.
Right. So now
you lose
in order to get that, a character of similar. That's really loud. Cool. Well, thanks, Tier Maker, for putting super loud ads on our video.
Yeah. I mean, you lose Dante, right? Which is a pretty good beat stick. He's a pretty good chapter master for the points. He hits decently hard. He's decently durable. He has a free fight on death. So it's like, okay, he's pretty good for the points. But then you're like, oh, wait, I can't take him. I need to pay for a chapter master that does significantly less. Doesn't regen me a CP. Is nowhere near as durable. Is just worse.
Yep. And then you're also having to spend additional CP on the relics.
Exactly.
Like
which you never really want to do ever. To be fair.
So now moving on, I'd like to break the format a little bit and talk about White Scars because, in my opinion, and we actually had a little bit of a discussion before the stream started about the comparison. In my opinion, White Scars and Blood Angels they're trying to be basically the exact same faction. Because mathematically, right, if you have Wrath of Ball in your army as a Blood Angels player, then your jump infantry are +2 inches to move, and you have +1 to charge. So you're +3 on your threat range, essentially. And White Scars, on the flip side, can just advance and charge, which is +3.5. So theoretically, the two factions are basically the same in speed. Blood Angels are +1 to wound, but White Scars are +1 damage in Super Doctrine. What White Scars don't have is access to the +1 attack in their Super Doctrine. So it's kind of becomes a question of like whether or not, like how much you value +1 to wound versus +1 damage.
They also don't have Sanguinary Guard with Death Company, which doesn't help them.
They also,
that's the other problem.
Yeah,
I think don't have those two hard hit
kind of like held back by their Codex compliance, right? Because they have like no special units whatsoever, so it's all Vanguard veterans and like assault.
They have Corsair Khan.
Corsair Khan, who moves 6 inches, like maybe hangs out with some Blade Guard veterans who can give you +1 to wound, right? So you're like aping Blood Angels, but it's so situational that it's like, does he really do that? Plus, their Smash character builds are actually super sick, and he eats their captain slot, which sucks. So it's like whatever.
It's rough.
But it seems to me that. Like I envision a situation where there's not a lot of -1 damage, right? But you're trying to chunk through stuff where the +1 damage is like a really big deal. And I don't know if White Scars, because of the objective scoring, have what it takes to like supersede Blood Angels. But I do think that there is situationally like an argument between them. Probably not right now because there's so much -1 damage. They
also have worse secondaries. Like the secondaries, like I mean, Synergy as well with White Scars, but they kind of force you into a very aggressive playstyle, which you don't always want.
Right.
And force you to kill stuff with assault weapons, which White Scars usually can only have Hell Blasters, so you have to spend CPs to make guns assault weapons, and even then, your guns are not doing really much. So it's not really the best. It just pushes you into a certain weird playstyle, and even then, it's not guaranteed 15, unlike a lot of the Blood Angel secondaries. And it just. I mean, advance and charge and fall back and charge is nice, but there's only so much it can do when you can advance and charge and you don't do any damage, right? It's like throwing a water, I guess a billion field of water at a brick wall full of spikes. Like it's just gonna burst. It's like, but if you throw a sledgehammer with Dev Company, it's gonna punch through that wall.
Right, a sledgehammer that pregame moves even.
Yeah, that pregame moves scores you 9 secondary points, 10-1 if you utilize it correctly. So, but the worst case scores you 8.
Right. But that said, I think that White Scars, especially in comparison to the other Codex compliant chapters that don't have their own list of secondaries, it just have one secondary. I think White Scars are near the top, and I definitely don't think that they're at the top for sure. But an aggressive playstyle that makes a really good use of, fast units that can disrupt enemy objectives, and you have really good Rights of War in that faction because you can deliver stuff really easily. I feel like still puts them, at least at the top half, like maybe somewhere around sort of bottom A tier.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a utility that you can have, and you can always build a utility White Scars list, all infantry list that just focuses on playing the mission rather than killing your opponent, which is I think is the way you kind of need to go with White Scars. You need to accept that you're not the most damaging melee chapter. You're definitely one of the fastest for sure and most maneuverable. So build into that and take secondaries like retrieve Nephilim data, which a lot of other armies can't necessarily do, or banners. Or you can definitely take behind enemy lines and just throw cheap assault squads now that they've got buffed into those lines there. You can advance and then charge them, or even just one man assault back, and you can score points like that. But you really need one to play the mission game more with what scars rather than the damage game, which is what Blood Angels and Iron Hands tend to do.
Yeah. That is like one point of comparison too, right? Because of those super cool cheap assault squads in Blood Angels versus White Scars, where the Blood Angels ones get multi-guns and the White Scars ones don't.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
No, I trust me, I know, because I looked at assault squads. I was like, oh wait, I can take multi-guns. I was like, oh wait, no, I can't. Or else I would take them instead of Vanguard vets. I'm like, I'd rather have 3 multi-guns and some melee.
Yeah.
Because you find that Vanguard vets they just don't do the damages that they used to, which really sucks because it was really fun seeing people's faces when you rolled those attacks. But it's just not what it used to be, unfortunately. For sure. Yeah, and Infernal Piss was good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Multi-gun's good. Yeah.
All right, so that moves us on to there's been a little bit of chat in the chat room about Imperial Fists.
Yes. Marines.
I'm glad we're ripping this Band-Aid off early. Imperial Fists, S tier for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
They definitely don't have a chapter tactic and super doctrine that literally negate one another, and they have a really, really good secondary that definitely doesn't require you to do a full round action to get 4 victory points.
And get tabled. Sorry, I mean that one unit can definitely be very, very durable.
Yeah, you won't get tabled because you get cover after the action completes. So
yeah, so whilst you're in the open doing that, no one's gonna shoot you because it would just be rude to shoot you, right? You're playing Space Marines. You're playing Imperial Fist. Why would anyone shoot you?
Yeah, your bright yellow armor definitely doesn't attract bullets at all.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, like it's called the Imperial Fist for a reason. You'll
give them a fist if they shoot your guys.
Yeah, like how dare you? Yeah, no, that's terrible.
I think
it's so sad.
They are, I believe, the worst army in the game. Certainly the worst. Man, it's close.
No. Yeah, because it's them and Imperial Guard right now. That's Astra Militarum that are really fighting for the wooden spear.
Yeah, Astra Militarum's doing stuff though. Imperial Fists are
yeah, I mean, if you really wanted to, give Imperial Fist a chance, you could just take loads of intercessors and just hope your opponent doesn't kill all of them fast enough. But that's just not gonna happen. That's the other problem.
Yeah.
What, it's 200 points for 10 intercessors?
We'll take a look at our stat check here real quick, chat. What do we got? Look at this down at the bottom. Oh, Imperial Fist. You could in theory take 27%
win rate, bro. Fucking hell. I mean, to be fair, in theory, you could take 80 intercessors with auto-bolt rifles and 2 characters. There you go. Just drown them in blood, literally.
Imperial Fist, there is a single successor build that has a 67% win rate. That sounds like one person's champion there right now. But otherwise, they are a pure Imperial Fist. Build? Yeah, Stalwart Warded, I guess. You're just doing Black Templars. You're just being Black Templars at that point.
I was going to say, yeah.
Just play Black Templars. What are you doing? But yeah, actual pure Imperial Fist looks like 13% win rate.
Fuck me.
Nice. So part of the issues there, I think, we can kind of elucidate the problems of the faction. They're paying the sins of the past for sure, because
100%.
In 8th edition there was an Imperial Fist build where you took nothing but whirlwinds and thunderfire cannons.
Made me shiver.
Yeah, when on release they were very strong, and hilariously they were built as, I think, part of kind of a Space Marine, like a Horus Heresy metagame almost, where every Space Marine supplement had tools to fight the previously released supplement. And Iron Hands came out, and I believe Imperial Fists were one step after them. And Iron Hands were all about buffing vehicles and stuff. And Imperial Fists came out and had +1 damage against vehicles in their super doctrine, which you could stay in all game. So you would take a bunch of indirect fire weapons. It would all ignore cover. It was all +1 damage against vehicles, and even your thunderfire cannon started blowing up tanks. And so there were some, and their lists were very in a lot of situations are very predicated on going first, because you would go first and your opponent's army would just vaporize to artillery. There was nothing they could do because he couldn't deploy.
Pretty much. I mean, to be fair, even if they went second, it just meant like if you couldn't turn one charge, you still died.
Yeah, for sure. They were wildly overcorrected in the 9th edition supplement update, where their chapter tactic, obviously, if you're playing the core faction, gives you exploding 6s on your bolt weapons. However, their super doctrine only buffs heavy weapons of strength of 7 or higher, of which there are, I think, 1 bolt weapon. I think, is it the weird assault cannon? It's a Curie's assault cannon, I think, is the only one that benefits from both. Or that's an assault cannon. I guess it's not a bolter.
It's not both.
Nothing interacts between the two, which is kind of wild.
I mean, you clearly take the Imperial Fist super doctrine for those damage for plasma with people that you shoot them turn 1, clearly.
Yeah. I do think like there are things you can do as Imperial Fists to try to make a game of it. I think you basically have. There's like one stratagem, right? There's a damage ignore stratagem that's like okay, and you can make your guys a little bit tougher with stuff. But their psychic discipline is terrible. Their secondary is awful. Yeah. Their stratagems are generally awful. Their super doctrine is situationally fine if you're in a super heavy vehicle, like a vehicle heavy metagame. But it doesn't, like we said, it doesn't interact with the other stuff. I think. It
only works with vehicles. I forgot.
Yeah,
I just
thought it was
plus 1
damage.
damage. Oh my god!
It's not just plus 1 damage generally. Yeah, it's only vehicles and buildings.
Oh, I thought it was just plus 1 damage. Oh my god!
No, it's worse
terrible.
Than that. And it also it opens you up for bad matchups, right? Because if your anti-tank you're like, okay, we're gonna adaptive tactics and put our guys into Devastator Doctrine and get plus 1 damage against vehicles. If you hit a heavily armored army that doesn't rely on vehicles, you're just boned. There's nothing. Like you're just dead. You're just dead. And actually, back in 8th edition, that happened to me. I was playing Iron Hands at one point, and I was like, we're fine against heavy armor because I can plus 1 damage like my whole army against it, and I hit Greater Demons. And I was like, all right, well, it's a bunch of 1 damage, I guess. Let's go. I think you can play Fire Raptor gunships and Riverboat Gambler your way to victory, potentially. Basically, is like what you do. You just go first, and you got plus 1 to hit from exploding 6s on like 25 heavy bolters gunshots. To
be fair, you go first, and you fight with Silent King. You can just pick up Silent King.
You just kill him. He's just dead.
Maybe.
Easy peasy. And like you can play like I don't know, like heavy bolter Centurions or something like that, and try to push. But yeah,
that is some serious hope.
It's not good. It's very bad. Crimson Fists. We mentioned a little bit. I think their chapter tactics a little bit better. They get the exploding 6s still right, but they also get plus 1 to hit against smaller units or larger units. Excuse me.
It's weird, right? Because Imperial Fist have the makings to be great. Like Imperial Fist have the makings to be great. But it's just like there's like outside of because the chapter tactic in itself isn't terrible. Like exploding 6s to hit on your bolt weapons, ignore cover, is pretty good. Like if you look at Head of Doom, they ignore cover. The 6s to hit were just an auto wound, so it's mathematically it's not terrible.
Right.
It's just the rest of the codex.
Yeah.
That's it.
It turns out a chapter tactics is not a faction make. You also need like some stratagems in there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's just nothing. Yeah. But that moves us on to Dark Angels, and it's almost worth breaking Dark Angels down into their 2 separate subfactions, or almost 3, right? Because there's Ravenwing, Deathwing, and Greenwing. If you play like,
I don't think Greenwing exists.
I saw one. I think there was like one X and 1 that was running like classic, like old school Dark Angels with the Hellblaster brick for plus 1 damage and Azrael to 4+ invuln save it, like old school stuff. But I don't think that's like super competitive. But I think it's really a question between Ravenwing and Deathwing, which one you're playing. And honestly, I think they're both kind of at the same power level right now.
I'd lean a bit more into Ravenwing just because Deathwing kind of got their secondaries kind of neutered,
right.
which is that's my main issue because they can't really take a both. Off one just isn't as good as it used to be. They just don't like the transhuman just isn't what it used to be because people need to kill Tyranid Warriors, and Tyranid Warriors are actually you find better than them because they hit harder.
Right.
They're funny enough. More durable, and they're
also transhuman.
They're also transhuman, and they can -1 damage. Like then they don't have a 2-up base save, but when you have a 5 of full no pain and -1 damage, it's like who cares?
Right.
and you're fearless. Which I mean, so are them as well, of course. But like just the sheer amount of buffs you can put on them, so it's like it's kind of like whatever. That's why I link a little bit more to Ravenwing, just because they can take Death on the Wind, which really helps. That's one. But they can also take like behind enemy lines because they are naturally a very fast army. They have an in-run on their fast, like they can actually leverage their primary speeders, which I don't think are terrible. They just need to come down a little bit more. But because they've got an in-run in Ravenwing, they can advance and shoot turn 1 and have the extra movement. They actually have the secondary play there, and the bikes aren't terrible. Yeah. And the planes are also pretty damn good. Like D3 shots every wound's a mortal wound, and you're like, oh wait, actually,
everyone's 3 mortal wounds. Yeah, they just play you for 9. These guys are gross.
Every it's 3 mortal wounds. It's like there's no damage pros.
Oh,
it's a lot of shots from each plane.
Yeah,
no problem.
You heard me? For sure. And I think that the comparison to, at least in my opinion, if you are looking, for the comparison between 2 factions, having speed and offense is usually going to be better than defense in 40k because oftentimes your opponent will be able to kill you regardless of your defense, or kill you enough that they can weaken you to the point that they can kind of out-attrition you. So you want to be able to do that to your opponent first. And if you're fast and have access to fast objectives secured, you play primaries and secondaries way better than if you were slow. So Deathwing is like kind of a stat check, where you just ask your opponent whether or not they can kill like 40 transhuman terminators. Yeah. Whereas Ravenwing is like a skill check, where if you're very good at using it and your target priority is on point, your movement's on point, then you have a much better chance. But obviously you don't get like your free wins from your opponent just like
100%
and dying. But I think I would put Dark Angels probably somewhere in A-ish, I would imagine.
Yeah, I would 100% put them in A tier. Like they're the third best Marines, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. And that moves us to Deathwatch, which is a whole can of worms.
Yeah, Okay, so Deathwatch is really interesting because I actually really like them. I just don't know what to take. That's the issue. Yeah. Like I really like them. They have all the makings and all the tools to be good. They have everything they need. Vicinos. They can be like, oh, your Necrons can get back up on 5s and 4s. Great, -1 to that. You have like Synaptic Link. Yeah, you don't have Synaptic Link anymore. Your Raveners are just gonna run away. They don't have the buffs. They actually have a lot of tools. I just don't know what to take with them. I'm gonna be honest. It's like just because Thunder Hammers aren't what they used to be with Armor of Contempt now. So all of a sudden that whole, I guess you could say, Army of Renown just isn't what it used to be.
Right.
Like, Storm Shields are not as great as they used to be because of Armor of Contempt. Thunder Hammers aren't as great as they used to be because of Armor of Contempt. Giving up that many no prisoner points in an economy where secondaries are so rare to find for a lot of armies is not great either.
Yeah.
So it's like they have amazing relics and warlord traits, but it's like, oh wait, I start with 6 CP. I want to take a Contempt or 2, I want to take these Dreadnoughts or 2, but it's like, oh, this is taking CP and I really want to spend all my CP pre-game. But Deathwatch are one of those Marines that have really good stratagems, in my opinion. But they don't have the CP to use them.
Right. Yeah.
Like they have like, yeah, it's just rough.
It feels like it feels like a toolbox that they forgot to put any tools in, right? Because there are so many cool things you can do, right? You can auto wound with flamers. You can redeploy your guys infinitely. You can take like extra large units of eliminators and stuff like that. Like the construction of kill teams and like the abilities that surround them are super sick. The problem is that it's probably mostly that they're too expensive and you can't fit enough into an army. I think
that's a Space Marine problem. That's not a Deathwatch problem. That's a space.
Well, but no, it's compounded as a Deathwatch problem, right? Because like you generally want to play in a kill team strike force, right? You want to play in the Army of Renown. I would say probably 90% of the time in Deathwatch. So you kind of write off like almost every vehicle in the Space Marine Codex. You just get rid of it because you can only take dedicated transports and Corvus Black Stars, if I remember correctly. So you're only playing the infantry, and you're attaching the infantry to troops choices, which you already want to take a limited number of. So it compounds in the Kill Team Strike Force, where like all of your specialist infantry that's really, really cool and does a bunch of sick stuff costs like 100 extra points because you have like 5 infiltrators attached to it, which does get problematic, I think, pretty quickly.
It does. It's I just think with Deathwatch, you kind of it's rough. It's rough because they just have so many tools, but then you like I have so many tools. I don't know what, like it's almost like paralyzed, like you paralyzed by choice. They have a great strats, but they're free CP. Like you want to use that every hit to wound. Like every hit is a wound strat because that's fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, it's
like
so
I'm Space Marines don't have a problem with hitting. They have a problem with fucking wounding shit, and their stuff is expensive.
Yeah.
Part of my language, but it's just like you start with 6 CP. You want to spend CP pre-game because guess what?
There's probably 4 CP going into characters for sure, at least.
Yeah, because Marines need to spend pre-game CPs to make their list function. Like that's where their strength comes from. That's their relics and water traits come from. They need to spend CPs for those. But then Deathwatch actually have great strats compared to other Marines, so they're like, crap, we can't use these strats as often as we need to, because unlike other Marines, they actually need to use their strats quite often in order to be highly effective, but they can't, because their strats are like 2 to 3 CP.
Yeah, in order to be the toolbox faction, you actually have to make use of the tools, but the problem is also just tools cost money.
yeah, those tools cost money, and GW said we're tax collecting, so there's no money left.
For sure.
No money left in the bank.
Yeah, so I feel, I don't know, somewhere B tier, I think, for Deathwatch. I'm certainly not going to say that I think the faction's bad. And like you said, I mean, they have some phenomenal abilities in there. I think if you were in, and this might actually happen with Chaos Demons, where if you were in a situation where single target enemy units are very problematic, and especially ones that modify conventional attacks, Deathwatch are immediately in that space in the metagame, right? So if we're talking about like, I mean, I just released a video about Nurgle Demons, right? Like Nurgle Demons can get up to -2 to be hit, and will probably have a bunch of wound roll modifiers, and then have their invulnerable save on top of that. And if you just come in with a bunch of flamethrowers,
we're just gonna ignore Nurgle Demons. We're not gonna talk about those. Like I'm sorry, but I know it's a Space Marine, but have you seen Nurgle? What was it called? Beasts that are just like so you didn't every phase people every phase. Oh, I'm gonna do 6 mortal wounds. Oh, I failed 1. All right, well anyways, it's now the shooting phase. I'm back up to 4. Like, oh, nice.
Sick. All right, cool. Yeah,
this is fine.
Yeah, so we'll have to see how that codex comes out. But I mean, if you're worried about that, and you can have just a drop pod for the Deathwatch veterans come down and combi flamer, like that entire unit, piece of chaos, piece of Nurgle. It's a vapor.
It's alright. I'll wait for I'll wait for Space Marines fucking 10.0, and I'll have all the aggressors with like 25-inch flamers. Who knows what GW comes out with?
I mean, plus they also have Tome of the Ectoclades, like you talked about, where they pick a data sheet and reroll against it.
That is really useful.
So like if you're in a situation, it works like a Seal of Oath, right? But also it can work if they spam a single data sheet a bunch of times.
Correct. Which is kind of, I mean, which is what I mean. Like they have the tools, just like, but all of a sudden, like those tools cost money, like you said. Like you can use it once, which isn't terrible, but then you have to pay the relic for it for once use relic, which can be really good, but it's situational.
Yeah.
But previously you didn't care because you started with 12 and now you start with 6, so you have limited resources. It's just a whole hurdle. I think Deathwatch are definitely one of the more CP intensive Space Marine sub-factions.
For sure.
Just because they have amazing relics and water traits and strats, but they can't they can't have the cake and eat it. They can have the cake and have a crumb.
Yeah. We'll see how the metagame shakes out. It feels like they need, I don't know. They need some of those abilities where it's like you get a once per game, strategic ploy strat or whatever for free. They need a couple of those, and I think they'd be really nice. Yeah.
They need Nutchment. They need CP.
For sure. Yeah. Just roll them back, and then it'll be fine. Moving on, we actually have a string of Black Armored Space Marine chapters here, I guess. So we started with Deathwatch, and now we're going to move to Iron Hands, which we just talked about for about 45 minutes, and I think we can safely put at the bottom of the faction in D tier garbage.
Oh, 100%. They are terrible. They're terrible.
Absolutely
terrible.
Contemptor costs 3 CP, dude. 3 CP for just a Contemptor Dreadnought? And he doesn't even, like... And when he one-shots a knight, the rest of your army doesn't get to attack. Like, it's anti-synergy.
Yeah, just doesn't work at all. I
It
know, right?
doesn't work at all.
The audacity, how dare he one-shot that knight? Everybody else wanted a piece of it as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
I am gonna put them at the top. I don't know. I forget if this is the top or if this side of Blood Angels is the top. But I think, in my opinion, they're above Blood Angels, or at least fighting Blood Angels for the top.
I would say so. I'd definitely say they almost go hand in hand. I'd say in Europe, Iron Hands have definitely the advantage. However, if you go to the States, I'd happily say that Blood Angels have the advantage with the terrain layouts they have over there, especially since USO is so prominent.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, that was easy. Raven Guard now. I think
They're also paying for their crimes.
yeah, Raven Guard also paying for their crimes for sure. Yeah, they were the core of 8th edition lists and even early 9th edition lists where they would use all their forward deploy abilities to put Centurions in your deployment zone turn 1.
18 Centurions.
Oh my god!
I played against it with God. I know it's like it's all the Centurions.
What a nightmare.
They're all gonna move.
Yeah. So and those abilities still exist. You can now you can't deploy forward deploy Centurions anymore, but you can do it with like aggressors and you can do it with Terminators, which is fine with Master of Ambush. The downside is that obviously there's the entire identity of faction is just entirely built around basically pregame moving and forward deploying. That's all they do. There's like a +2 charge bonus for jump pack infantry in their stratagem list, and then there's like a bunch of bonuses against characters. So if you're in a situation where pregame moving and forward deploying is going to win you the game, great. The problem is that they don't have any damage buffs once they get there, and Space Marines now they don't hit super hard. So what you'll find is a lot of times you're in a perfect storm situation, right? Your opponent they themselves don't have any forward screening. You win the roll to go first, which is a big part of it, and then you jam your entire Raven Guard Space Marine army up in your opponent's face, and you hit them, and occasionally you'll hit them and they won't die, and then you're dead because your whole army's in melee with them on turn 1.
Correct.
But the best case scenario is that you push for a coin flip to win the game, right? Even if, assuming that unbuffed Vanguard veterans or whatever can pregame move and then charge on turn 1 and kill whatever they charged, then if you win the roll to go first, that's great. If you lose the roll to go first, you're just playing bad Blood Angels, like really bad Blood Angels, like Blood Angels with no stratagems and no others, like no chapter tactic, basically.
And no damage.
Yeah,
I mean, and also no secondaries. I don't know.
Their secondary is okay. I wouldn't say that it's like great, but I think it's the problem is it's not as good as banners, right?
No, raise the banners is just better
for sure.
It sucks, right? Because Raven Guard actually have like they're actually cool Marines. I mean, like they're a bit emo because of their character now, but it's like they're not bad Marines. They're pretty good. It's just them alongside with Imperial Fists are just still definitely paying for their sins. While still Iron Hands got away scot-free. Well, we say that like it's like it's rough. Yeah. It's 100% rough.
Yeah. So I think if I were a new player trying to get into, there's a lot of people who really like there's a lot of Raven Guard stands out there, right? And right now the sort of design of the chapter is like go first or bust, which is already not a good place to start. And then from there, once you go first and you hit your opponent, you're just crossing your fingers and hoping that they die, which is like 2 strikes against them, right? It's an inconsistent game plan in that you have to roll well, you have to roll your initiative roll, and you have to roll well once you connect. So I would just play Blood Angels. They also have pregame moves, and their army hits like a fucking truck.
Like truck is understatement. Yeah, I'd put Raven Guard as like D tier, 100%. They just don't have the damage.
Yeah,
they don't have the damage. They have some speed.
We gotta put something in C tier, and I think they're better than Imperial Fists. To be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the other Marines will be in C tier. Don't worry. I just really find it hard for Raven Guard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they're better than Imperial Fist for the sole fact that they're slightly faster, but that's it. Imperial Fist still hit harder, funnily enough. That's the issue. Right. It's like,
I mean, like pregame moves and redeployments
It's nice,
very
right?
good abilities, right? But they're
100%.
just I don't think they alone
They
are
can't
not good enough to
capitalize.
carry
No,
the faction.
100%.
Yeah.
Like if you're like Eldar that can pre-game, well, not pre-game, but redeploy and hit someone really, really hard, sure. But they can only pre-game move and then be like, how about you?
cannons and like a Hail of Doom Avenger squads.
Yeah,
They're redeploying like some aggressors. Less exciting.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but yeah, their redeploys are just insane.
Yeah.
They hurt. That Avengers.
So that moves us on to Salamanders. Who I'm interested to hear your take on Salamanders.
I really like Salamanders. I really like Salamanders. I think Salamanders are like the other Marines that can flex into both options. I mean, you saw at what's it called? If you follow the WTC like I did, you saw like Olivier, like that was on the French WTC team during the War Masters GT, make top cut with Salamanders. I think he ended up coming third in the end. Yeah, he did. He ended up coming third with like aggressively. I mean, there's some parts of this that I would change, but it goes to show that he had speed with Vanguard vets. He had multi speeders, which synergize well. He had Vulcan Hestan, which works really well with the Flamers, Flamer aggressors, and Apothecary to bring them back. And then he had Eradicators, which I personally wouldn't take, but that's just me. Not a big fan of Eradicators, full stop. But you could see that the list is pretty durable because you can't reroll to win against it.
Right.
It has a 6-up Full No Pain because of, as you can probably imagine, the Apothecary.
Yep.
I just haven't taken one in so long because of the Apothecary.
Yeah.
And the Flamers.
And they also have, if you don't want an Apothecary, they also have an Obsidian Equivalent, which does the same thing. Except
yeah,
I think
pretty
it's a bigger aura, I think.
It's a bigger aura and it can affect dreads as well, which is nice. It's just cool. What was it? Just units. It's regardless. Like it helps Salamanders, right? And then additionally, on top of that, you also have the Flamers, which will Vulcanistan and get a reroll to wound, and you're just like, oh wait, okay. But when you start really think about it, a 6-man squad, that's a maximum of 6, right? But then because it's playing Salamanders, they have +1 to wound, reroll wounds, AP1, and they have it for 3 turns. And then you also, on top of having +1 to wound with those buffs, you can have max shots. So a 6-man, 6 times 6. I'm terrible at maths. What's
36?
Oh no, it's 12 per. It's 12, so it's 72.
For
yeah.
2 Flamers.
Yeah, because so it's 72 Flamer hits.
Full reroll. Reroll wounds.
Yeah, it's
for sure.
It's
+1.
It's just,
even a TA vehicle, they're winning on 5 rerolls at AP1.
Yeah,
they'll take it down.
It's dead. But even then, like Tyranid Warriors, Tyranid Warriors do the damage by charging, and then they can friend Overwatch.
Right.
So they can have that Flamer unit Overwatch you, another Flamer unit Overwatch you, all has +1 to wound, all has AP1. They hit good in combat. The only weakness is that they're slow and they have a good secondary where they can just pick an objective, and if you don't kill that unit with every unit they hit them with, they just get a point. So it's like, okay, you're not gonna one-shot this squad. It's gonna take you multiple activations. So I'm gonna score points from this. If it's a middle objective, I'm laughing. I'm just gonna sit these 6 here. You're gonna have to shoot pretty much your entire army to try and chew through them. And if you're and they're gonna be touching cover, so they've got a 2-up save with armor of contempt, T5, 3 wounds, no reroll to wounds, transhuman, and you're like, okay, this is actually really hard to shift, even for a marine army, like mine with high IP and high volume, because you just can't reroll to wound against them, and it's really frustrating.
For sure.
But they also have the flex and the counter pick these melee armies, because if you try to charge them, you just take so much.
Yeah, you just die. You're just
dead. Catastrophic damage.
Yeah.
And
that was, like, to be fair, that was their game plan hasn't really changed, right? Like that was always how Salamanders played. But the difference is that they didn't have Promethean Creed, and the release. I think I would have put Salamanders in like the mid to bottom like echelon of the faction previously, because there was a lot of situations where they would set up and they would be like, all right, here's my game plan. I'm gonna put 10 aggressors or whatever, 5 Terminators and 5 aggressors, like Centurions, whatever their tanky unit was. They're like, I'm gonna put that in the middle of the table, and then I'm gonna start scoring primaries. And you're like, well, what if I just don't let you? And they're just like, well, I guess I die. Like that was my game plan. But now they're like, I'm gonna push this towards the middle of the table, and you're like, okay, what if I don't let you? And they're like, oh, that's fine. I'll 10 Promethean Creed, and I'll probably 12 it. And if you ever try to stop me at all, I'll 15 it. So they basically become like essentially like a Deathwing army,
but better.
that has like insano guns, like crazy guns.
Yeah, and you still need to respect aggressors in combat because it's power fists that are gonna have 4 rerolls because there's probably a chaplain nearby. And on top of that as well, actually, I don't know if the like Flamestorm gauntlets are actually a power fist or if it's just Flamestorm gauntlet, because if it is, then it gets +1 to wound anyways because it's a flame technically, which is weird of how it's defined with their super doctrine. But it's that's a kind of word. I'm just not gonna open it. But like yeah, it's like I'm not gonna get into those interactions right now. I was like, yeah, let's not. Reaper for Blitztrax is enough, and people play it wrong anyway, so it's fine. I still need to play it the wrong way because everybody says it that way. It's like whatever. Needs need the buff. Anyways, small rant over. But yeah, no, like
I don't even get into that conversation. Mod class of Thyrax for life, dude. That looks so dumb.
But yes, like, that's what I mean. It's like it's actually they're pretty good. 100%. Salamanders, I would say, are in a decent spot. They're not fast, so they're never going to really contest the backfield, which is why you take the Vanguard bit, so you can actually try and threaten it. But they're really that mid-board army that synergizes really well, that has, you know, heroics with their friends chart, like 2d6 movement, or 2d6 heroic in the arena after overwatching. So they have a lot of tools for 100% for sure. But they're definitely not the.
There is to be clear for everyone in chat, there is a clause under flame weapons that say that if you have a bonus for flame weapons, it only applies to the shooting profile.
There you go.
Profiles are unaffected.
There you go.
We got there. We figured it out.
Boom. Well, I don't play Salamanders, but regardless of that, like you don't. Well, I don't play them yet. Who knows? But but no, like they're like I would say they're really good. Just because not being able to reroll to wound is really big in this day and age. Because so many armies have reroll to wound nowadays. It's like you want reroll to wound, you can have it. You want reroll to wound, you can have it. You want reroll to wound, you can have it.
Yeah.
But it's like
even losing out on like, you know, like in your army, right? Like you have a Vox of Spirit and Lieutenant, and you're kind of like banking on reroll ones across like basically your entire army, like at least your dreadnoughts and maybe.
Oh yeah, 100%. You lose a lot of efficiency.
And then you just lose, you know, probably about 8% of your damage just right off the bat from that lieutenant or getting blanked. Which like when you don't think about it, you're like, oh, whatever, I lose my reroll ones. But then, as soon as there's a Melt-A-Gun that rolled a 1 to wound, you're just like, oh, damn it. And you're like, it's okay, I'll CP reroll that. And then the Salamander like grabs your hand. He's like, no. We don't do that here.
No.
Yeah.
We don't reroll to wound here. Yeah. No CP, no nothing.
Yeah, I can speak from experience that that ability doesn't sound that great until it is, and then it's the most obnoxious thing in the world, and you just
100%. I mean,
beat your head against.
I know how it feels to not reroll. I mean, a little bit like on compounding rerolls, not being able to reroll is like against Trans Hitman.
Right.
What's it called? What's their face? Like Chaos Racers. But you can get around that. You can take a. Yeah, I mean, but luckily for you, the luckily you have Iron Hands is you just have so much of that volume that you can like, I'll hit on 4s. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just gonna win you on 2s of everything. And then
luckily for Salamanders, Flamers don't roll to hit. So.
Boom. So that does help, to be fair. But the other problem you have with Salamanders, which is why I'm not playing them pretty much exclusively, is that the main damage dealers are aggressors. And then you're like, great. So what happens if you Armor of Contempt? You're like, I guess I'm just not gonna do any damage. I'm gonna make you take a lot of saves, but it's, if you're touching cover, it's like, great. What do you do?
Yeah, I think I mean they can push into the Melta, like that's why the Eradicators are like in that list, right? If you need to kill a Space Marine squad that's a touch and cover, the Eradicator squad just does it. You also get like I mean one of my favorite like little wombo combos in that list is like Brayer Thatch Mantle with Vulcan like stapled to his ass, because he gets full rerolls on his Flamers, and his Flamers are AP 2. And he has 2 of them, and that's awesome, and they're 2 damage. Yeah, they're I mean their characters are good, right? They have Crucible of Battle, which is just good all the time. Like, you know,
plus
having a 1
wound
CP Veterans of the Long War is just like, it's
plus 1 wound is.
Yeah, and they have a +1 strength, strat too. So
+1 and double damage on 6s.
Yeah, so if you're not prepared for it, occasionally they just wound basically the whole game on 2s. Especially if you're toughness 4, they can +1 strength to wound you on 3s, and then +1 to wound you on 2s. And even their like regular dudes start wounding you on 2s. So yeah, salamanders go hard sometimes.
they do. I mean, it costs them CP to do it, but like a lot of their good strats, luckily, like either 2 CP once per turn, or like 1 CP once per phase, which is manageable.
Yeah. So where would you put salamanders in the list?
I'd definitely put them at the lower. Yeah, I'd put them a lower spectrum of A tier, just because the secondary definitely helps them out.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at the other Space Marines. I don't think there's gonna be another A tier there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Wolves.
Yeah, sorry, Space Wolves. That's not. I mean, I don't think Space Wolves are bad. We can move on to talk about Space Wolves.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Space Wolves are terrible either. But the main issue with Space Wolves is they're just not what they used to be, right? Like they still hit decently hard, but they just like the meta game right now. They don't trade efficiently with everything else that trades into them. Right. Like they don't trade well with Drukhari, which isn't even meta. They don't trade well with Drukhari. They definitely don't trade well with Tyranids. They definitely don't trade well with Sisters. They, funnily enough, don't trade well with Necrons either. And because a lot of the damage is concentrated melee damage, it's rough for them, right? Mainly because Vanguard Vets were their main damage dealers, and Vanguard Vets, as I mentioned earlier, became significantly worse in the current meta game. And their characters still hit pretty damn hard, but at the end of the day, they need to use their characters to hit pretty damn hard, and the characters alone are not going to win you the game like they used to previously. They can't be like, okay, I'm going to move here to go Stranglehold, or I'm not going to go here and what's it called, wherever the secondaries are. Thunderwolf Cav are not great because they can just get move blocked.
Right.
Wolfen are not great because they're not actually that durable. Like they're just T5.
Very durable.
The T5, the 2 wounds. Actually, I was surprised when I did my point. I was like, there's still 2 wounds.
It's a 40mm base Space Marine infantry that still has 2 wounds. Yeah, wild.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's like, but they don't hit as hard because there's just so much transhuman and defensive buffs in the game. It's like, cool. What are you going to do with these trans hitman and -1 damage? Like your Thunderhammers are useless because that's what they're always AP3. But it's like it's 5 up these other Marines and 4 up these Terminators, and these Tyranid Warriors do transhumans. So your strength 10 doesn't matter. You're -1 damage, so you're not even killing a guy. There's a feel no pain there. These Sisters, then those guys are just not trading well at all. It's like cool, you can fight on death, but it's like, mate, you can put they're gonna put 2 Repentia into you.
My 170 point unit of Wolfen is gonna kill 5 Repentia.
Yeah, and those 5 Repentia are gonna kill your 10 Wolfen there.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not amazing.
I think it feels to me that I mean, Space Wolf's thing has always been to basically play like normal Space Marines, but just do it better than everyone else.
And the trade.
They just play like a bog standard Space Marine game plan, but their like stratagems and toolboxes is a little bit better than a normal Space Marine chapter. So if you're comparing them to like Ultramarines or Raven Guard or Imperial Fist or something, they're just going to come out on top every time. But if you're comparing them to something that's like more highly focused, they don't necessarily have that. Although to be fair, like I mean, they have some combos, right? Like they can Longfang drops are good because of keen senses, and they can outflank like heavy weapon teams and stuff.
It's not terrible, but I don't think it's enough to. I don't think it's enough of a difference to actually tip the favors of the game in your favor significantly over the course of multiple games in order to make a difference. That's the only issue. Like they're like niche tricks. They're nice tricks. A nice trick will help you against an opponent or two, but it's not going to help you consistently.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. And the damage isn't what it used to be. It's still nice.
Yeah,
but
it feels like they're missing like their sanguinary guard. That's what it feels like. It was supposed to be Wolfen, but Wolfen just got left behind by like even I think in the 9th edition switchover that like they lost. They used to have the ability to fight on death regardless of whether or not they fought, right? So they double fought if you killed them. And they had 3+ invuln save storm shields. And they lost a 3+ invuln save storm shield.
And they had a 5 up no pain.
They had a 5 up no pain. And they had perma fight on death. And they had advance and charge too, right? They had just all these like, stacked abilities that made them so powerful.
No advance and charge now.
Right.
No special fight on death.
Yeah.
Less killing because of what the meta is really at.
Right.
Less durable. No feel, no pain, and no fire, and no free up in one. It's just not where you want them to be.
Right.
They just don't hit as hard as they need to.
Yeah. So it feels like they're like maybe tomorrow, Hounds of Mordecai get like a total rework that makes them the greatest melee unit in the game. They're like base move 12 because their legs are long or something. I don't know, and they're like become really powerful. And then I think like Space Wolves are back in the discussion. But I think they're probably like somewhere around B tier, right? I don't know where the comparison is with Deathwatch. It does feel like Deathwatch had more things going on, so you'd probably like be like something like.
Let's see. They're not B. They're just
C tier for Space Wolves.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, dog players.
Oh,
they're just
sorry,
they are literally dog.
Space Wolves did do well during T5S2. See, Space Wolves have. I don't know what it is, but we have an like a dramatic overrepresentation of Space Wolves in T5S2.
Yeah, I know.
We've had two out of 5 T5S2 champions played Space Wolves in the finals.
Yeah, and one of them now plays Tyranids and the other one plays Eldar. There's a reason they don't play Space Wolves.
Yeah. Nah, what's Animator's on Dark Angels, right? He's been playing Ravenwing.
Oh yeah, but
so that's like a lateral move, I guess.
Well, he's moved on to Eldar from what I know.
Oh, has he?
So,
okay. Well,
yeah. Like both Space Wolf players have moved on to completely different codexes. Have moved over to Xenos.
Space Wolves did just get an S tier 30k helmet though, Chad. That's
yeah. To be fair, that is now canon. That is now completely lore friendly. That is canon.
If this was a tier list of best headgear, Space Wolves would be right up in the top.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Another faction that would be pretty up near the top, thanks to those big bucket helmets, is Black Templars.
Black Templars are solid. I like Black Templars.
Black Templars are pretty good, yeah.
They have a lot of ways to make a lot of their squads like mini champions, which actually matters on the sergeants, which is nice. Like I had a Blade Guard veteran that ignored AP 1 and 2 when that played against. It's like, oh, this is pretty annoying.
Right. And then you shoot pretty much that guy, right? And you're like, you shoot him with the AP2 weapons. He allocates the 2+ save idiot who ignores your AP. Takes a bunch of damage. Eventually he dies, and then he just resurrects the apothecary.
Yeah, you just grow him back, and then you have like an eradicator that's like -1 damage. And like, oh, this guy's pretty fucking annoying.
Yeah.
What? He's a cunt.
Plus that.
How am I gonna kill him?
That Blade Guard veteran's like weapon skill 2 and has additional attack and like the 3 damage sword too, right? Like that.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. Like they hurt, and then they've got like what's they called the Vanguard vets, like do mortal wounds, and then you've got the litany for mortal wounds. They have a lot of neat tricks. Like they are definitely like strong Marines.
Yeah,
they're not the best.
The thing that they're missing, at least it's felt to me, is like a really solid secondary. They feel like the only supplement chapter that just totally missed its secondary selection. Yeah,
like their secondaries, like they basically that's the main issue. Like you can have great shields and all of that, but what secondaries do you take? You take banners, but then that's pretty much it. Like what else can you take? Like you can't. Yeah, shock tactics you can, I guess, but you don't really have throwaway units. You have every one of units is like somewhat elite. You don't want to really throw them away, because as much as you're durable and you hit hard, you're still Marines. You still die in the end towards the end out there.
Right.
Like a zone rolling super smite is still going to pick up like majority of the squads. Like it's rough.
Yeah, they do have I did play against them in a tournament relatively recently, and they basically stacked every piece of anti-psyker technology they could put into a single list, which is a pretty interesting way to approach the game. And it did make I was running double zone tropes, and it did make my smites pretty awkward because they did have the litany for ignore psychic powers, and then they had obviously their unchapter tech, and they also had a Calexis assassin. I don't like that guy. Calexis assassin bad. Don't take him. But the litany certainly is like pretty problematic if you're trying to deal damage with mortal wounds.
100%. But yeah, like the main issue is just secondary. Like they have good traits. Funny enough, Armor of Contempt actually made them worse than better because they already had a 5-up in one, so it just made them worse in the Marine matchup, funnily enough, because their hordes just don't do anything now.
Right.
Because the horde before like AP1, like AP2 on mass, but now it's like, oh great, if I go to Space Marines, I die, and I just bounce.
Yeah.
And they also have the issue as much as they don't really have any secondaries to gain. They give out a lot of no prisoner points. Trust me when I say that, because you're not taking dreadnoughts, you're taking just infantry. Because your infantry is better. So I think Black Templars in the grand scheme of things are good. However, they suffer from not having a secondary, a reliable secondary, like reliable second or third secondary to take, and they actually give out secondaries themselves. So I think because of that, as much as they're good, and I want to put them in A tier, I don't think I can because of that issue. I think there will be a B tier faction because of it, because of the lack of secondary options and point scoring in that category.
It's weird that their best secondary. I'm running through their secondary list real quick here. I guess I could do that on stream too, so everyone else can watch. But their best secondary, I think, in my opinion, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is their Allow Not the Worship of Unclean Idols, which is just shock tactics. And it's in the same category as shock tactics.
They couldn't take both.
Your best, if it was in a different category and you could double up, we'd be talking, because you take an objective, you get 5 points for it. You're like, ooh, that's exciting. But the fact that they're basically the same secondary. In fact, the Black Templars one is worse. Is that right?
Yeah, you got 2 points.
You get 2 points, and it has to be core or chaplain. Versus 3 points. It's just weird.
Why would you not take the shock tactics?
You would never not do that.
Wait, is it actually at the end of your turn to score 2 points if you control one? Wait, what? Why would? Why? What?
Yeah. And their other secondaries are. I do like their No Mercy, No Respite. It's okay. It's a kill more in. I think it's a kill more in melee, but then you also get 3 points depending on what your vow is. And like you said, if you're not taking the Stalwart vow, which you don't always need to because you now have Armor of Contempt, like you can kind of pick depending on what your opponent's army is. So you kind of have like 3 floating points there. But again, you like grind them secondaries are always like just right up in the air because anything can happen. Your opponent like biffs, like bosses a couple, like an invulnerable save 1 turn. You're like, oh great, I lose like 4 points. Great, this is the best. And then there are other ones that challenge secondary, which I always think is terrible. So, man, they're so close. They're so close.
They are so close. It's. I think if they can plug the secondaries, because it would be because right now the main issue is that they're on back foot on secondaries because they don't have many great options to choose from. But also they just give us so many no prisoners. It's like they're actually in a deficit secondary. It's like playing knights.
Yeah.
Like imagine if you're playing knights, but your knights don't score secondaries. You're like, well, they're great, but I'm giving 15 points of secondaries down the hole. Like imagine playing grey knights and not being able to take Warp Ritual. It's basically how it feels, right? They're good, but you're giving 15 for Beholder Witch, but you plug that with Warp Ritual. If you don't have Warp Ritual, you're like, well, fuck. Yeah. What do I do?
So I do think that, and this is less useful in Nephilim than it probably ever has been, but I do think that their primary objective control is way better than everyone else. Because they do have that devout push that's usable in either fight phase and can move you 3 inches, so they can steal objectives from you. If they have one dude towing the objective and you have a 5-man or whatever, and you take the objective from them and they just devout push the entire unit of Crusaders on the objective, they teak it and then they score.
If you're not careful, then 100%.
Right. Plus, they can convert their units to OBSEC in command phase, so they can steal objectives that way. They have a bunch of different ways to manipulate objective control. The downside is that, and you can, I don't know if this is your experience too, but I found that it's easier than ever to max primary in Warzone Nephilim because the tertiary objectives score so quickly. So, sometimes that bumps them like 3 points. You score like a 45 versus a 42 because you 12 an extra turn or something like that. And that doesn't usually tip the game as much as having a really good secondary does.
Yeah, I've because you need to remember, like if it's tipping like 3 points, that's nice. But if you have a secondary that gives you like 12 to 15, that's making a considerably higher impact on the game, which is what Black Templars is giving out roughly. They're giving almost like a 12-point deficit because they're giving out no prisoners. at least in that quantity, because they have lots of money and free win models.
Oh yeah, the Black Templar's shock tactics is repeatable in one turn.
Okay.
It's each objective marker, not one or more objective markers.
Okay.
Right. So you can max it more quickly, I guess. Yeah,
okay, that's all right. But then
that is better, I guess, because you can take 2 objectives and score 4.
Yeah, but you can't take a shock tactics, so.
But you can't take both, yeah. It's easier to max. Because shock tactics, if you lose out on a turn, you're just dead. But if BT like on second turn take 3 objectives, like that's 6 points. So.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I'm feeling kind of B for.
Oh yeah, I'd
probably like Death Watch-ish. Probably above Death Watch. Their damage output's a little bit better. They're much more focused than Death Watch, but again, like their scoring is like.
Yeah, I'd say B as well for sure.
Yeah. And that brings us to our very last
the poster boys.
Blue boys, the Ultramarines. So I have a video actually coming out later this week about where I talk about Space Marine chapters, and I actually basically broke Ultramarines into 2 separate chapters because, and I know some people are going to get mad in the comment section, and already are mad in chat, that we've basically been rolling successor chapters and regular chapters together because generally speaking they're almost identical, or the successor chapter just might as well be how you play it, right? Which I think is the case of Space Wolves. You kind of rarely see pure Space Wolves now, and it's always like a World of Rage. Like maybe a Born Heroes or a Master Artisans build. Ultramarines, because of the fact that they have an entire baseball team full of special characters, feel very different whether you're playing pure Ultramarines who have a Garbo chapter tactic. Fall back and shoot is not what it's cracked up to be. Usually because you like lose out an OSA moment and then you were going to charge that unit anyway, so like who cared? Versus if you switch out that chapter tactic for a better one, the entire face of the faction changes because you lose access to all those characters.
Yeah,
so,
which is rough.
Which does suck because their characters are sick, right?
Yeah, like the special characters is why I think you play Ultramarines. Like Tigerius is really good.
The best psyker in the faction. Full stop.
If I had Tigerius, if I could take Tigerius in Iron Hands, I might actually be tempted to play it pure Iron Hands. But I have Feros, and Feros is terrible.
Yeah. Another man paying for the sins of the past.
Yeah, and honestly, fucking hell. Then you have Gilliman. Gilliman went down 80 points, so he's 400 points. He's actually pretty good.
He's a competitive choice for sure.
Yeah, he's actually pretty good. They also have Victrix Guard, which still have a 3-up in one.
Victrix Guard, a good unit.
Yeah.
Tyrannic War Veterans, not great, but they're there also.
Yeah, but they're cheap. They're 18 points. They can reroll to win these Tyranids.
Yeah.
The AP2 base.
Yeah.
They're not terrible.
And then also, in faction Seal of Oath, right?
It was
Seal of Oath, like absolutely gorgeous. But the flip side is right that basically. There's 3 things going for Ultramarines here. It's the characters, the incredible characters. Chaplain Cassius too. He's a 95-point Master of Sanctity. He can't take Wise Order, which sucks, but he's 95 points. He's like T5 and has a 2 damage like a Mastercraft Flamer. Like that guy's actually sick.
Yeah, it's not bad at all.
Yeah, and so you have insane characters, right? You have rapid redeployment. So 2 CP redeploy 3 things, and then you have Seal of Oath, I think, is the other one. So
2 CP in this economy with Space Marines.
It's a lot. It's a lot, but
everything.
I think if you are playing Ultramarines, right, you're
you want to leave
your game plan on that, right? So
100%.
I think it's a question, I guess it's not a comparison between the 2 different versions. I think that there are just 2 Ultramarines armies. There's the character brick that takes like Gilliman and Tigerius and like puts a bunch of buffs on a Dreadnought or something. And then there's the Invictor Warsuit like Alpha Strike, which is just playing Raven Guard, except that you also like get Seal of Oath, I guess. Where you forward deploy a bunch of Invictor Warsuits. You switch out your chapter tactic to like Whirlwind of Rage or something, so that when they punch a little bit better. And then you hope they explode in your opponent's army, I guess. And if you lose the roll to go first, you can redeploy them back in your deployment zone, which Raven Guard crucially can't do with Invictors. They can do with the infantry, but not the Warsuits. I don't think either of those armies are very good, but I do think that those are the 2 ways you build them, and they are very distinctly different. I would put them. I'd put them below Space Wolves. I think. I think I would put them.
They are definitely not as good as Space Wolves. Yeah. I would put them. They're better than Raven Guard. I would say that with hand on my chest.
Yeah.
They're not better than Space Wolves.
Right.
That's the issue.
Yeah. Yeah. I still don't like. Their secondary is terrible too. And like.
What do you mean? Much for Macrash?
Come
on. Craig. No.
Mea culpa. I misread it. I did a video about Space Marine secondaries, and I misread it, and I thought you could do it on deployment zone. Objectives, and I was like, this is an easy 12er. This is okay. It's probably not banners, but it's probably fine. Nope, you can't do it on deployment zone secondaries. You're gonna score an 8 on that, and you're gonna be happy with it, and that's it. That's all you get. It's just
maybe
like
8.
Yeah,
that's it.
It's like a version of the Raven Guard secondary, but like significantly worse, and also still not like competes with banners. You're like, oh god.
Banners is king. People need to accept this. Like banners is the way to go.
Yeah.
Raise that banner. Plant it down.
Yeah. So very sad March for McCrag time. But yeah, it's like Ultramarines they're like too poster child. I think they get like it's similar to the other factions we have at the bottom, right? Where I think the theme that you can see is that the factions that have not scored highly are the ones that don't have like a consistent theme. I guess the only exception to that is maybe Iron Hands, but Iron Hands just have like a tool for every situation and are really good at it. So like they're good at shooting, they're good at fighting, they're a little survivable. The only thing they don't have is like a threat range increase, but that's what drop pods are for.
Yeah.
But like Blood Angels, right, are super highly specialized. They're very good at melee. Salamanders
100%.
are like the tanky territory holders. Even Black Templars, right, like super specialized in melee. And then once you get down to the bottom, like Ultramarines and Space Wolves are sort of the jacks of all trade. And then the other factions, like, GW forgot to give them a mechanical identity. So
I think GW just forgot. So that's it. Like it just ends there.
Yeah.
GW just forgot about them.
Yeah, for sure. But I think Fouch, I'm proud of us because we made like a beautiful little bell curve with our tier list.
Oh yeah,
I'm happy with how this tier list came out.
Yeah, this isn't the official tier list. You've not heard it.
Everybody screenshot it, post it to your Discords, and
this is put it on Facebook competitive. This is the tier list.
There it is. We've done it.
This is it.
Fouch has spoken. He's put his foot down. I've
laid down the law. This is it. This is official.
Yeah. So do you think that there is there a situation where, outside of, I guess, like playing in US Open terrain or whatever, where something would knock you off of Iron Hands in the foreseeable future?
Going back to playing my god.
Master Military. All right, fair enough.
I think the T5C community and some other mates are like one of the few people who know that actually played guard for most of my 40k before played Marines. So that'd be fun to go back to if they're not terrible and can do some form of damage, maybe.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get
probably
new Cancerkin models. Oh my god.
Oh, they're so. I'm actually just in the progress of. I think I'm just gonna buy a lot of the Death Corps infantry. I'm just gonna buy them because they look cool. And then I'm just gonna build and paint them, and they're gonna be gold and purple like my Marines.
Sick. There you go. And then you can ally them together for Apocalypse games, and it's all cohesive. That's playing the long game over here.
Apocalypse. I forgot that exists.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody did. The list will stand until 2 a.m. when I wake up in a cold sweat and think about a factor I forgot. Oh no, what did I forget? There's like a whole chapter that we just didn't even cover or something.
Oh, well, there's probably a reason for that then.
Yeah.
What does Fouchini think of Minotaurs, Iron Hands, etc. double character dreads? I don't think you want another character dread. I think one's enough. Like the other one doesn't do anything, especially with Armor of Contempt. It's just like if To the Last was still a secondary, then maybe I'd think about it. But he doesn't score you to the last. He's just there.
Right. And he doesn't have. He's a plasma cannon, right? Is the second.
Yeah, he's a plasma cannon, and his damage and his weapons AP free damage, which is not what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, I kind of have the problem with the same problem with the Spaceless character dreads, where you take like Bjorn the Fell-Handed, right, and he's like this super cool gun platform. They can't be shot, except he's like 2 last cannon shots. Really
that's it.
All right, well, this isn't that exciting. So this guy's shooting like a regular plasma cannon downrange. You're like, oh, well,
Yeah, it's like,
yeah,
it's not phenomenal. It's not terrible.
Yeah. That said, I think if you want to sort of expand out from the baseline of I think your Iron Hands list, the fact that it's a successor gives you a lot of flexibility. So you can swap into Forge World chapters and play around with the special characters, because I think there are some like pretty sweet special characters. And in your list, you have a captain slot open, so you could take like the Red Scorpions guy who gives +1 attack. Like that guy's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's him. I think it's Tiberius the Red Wake.
Mm-hmm. He gives +1 strength, I think, in an aura, Tiberius.
Oh yeah, he's +1 strength. Yeah, but he's a beat stick in combat.
Cassin Sabius is the Red Scorpions.
Oh, Cassin Sabius. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, like and that's pretty good. To be fair.
There's a universe for a while where, at least when Tyranids were running like psychic operas, where you took Severin Loth because he gives you rerolls against psychic.
I have actually looked at Severin Loth myself. I was like, if I ever want to take a psychic, I just take Severin Loth. I'm just like, yes, I do.
Yeah.
It's not just like yet.
So yeah, once you delve into the sort of bottomless pit that is the Imperial Armor Compendium, there's like a lot of flexibility that you can squeeze out of those Forge World characters. That's pretty interesting and cool. So yeah, I think there's some ways to like personalize your Space Marine army, even if you're just playing, sort of I guess what is the Fouchini meta at the time.
Yeah, Fouchini meta. Back then, not anymore.
Yeah. But I think that's all I had to talk about. Fouch, do you want to plug your gaming club one more time before we start wrapping things up?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, War Masters 40k, you'll probably see us at events. Like, we're going to LGT in a month. A lot of us are also planning to go to LVO. If you ever see us or ever want to talk to us, hit us up. You can find us on our Instagram. We have we basically post content there every now and then, every time we go to an event. We've got a lot of great painters like Julio, Guillaume, and a lot of the people there, and a lot of us just go to tournaments. And of course, if you ever see us, feel free to come and say hello. We're friendly, we promise. But yeah, that's pretty much what I had to say.
Sick. Yeah. Well, Fitch, thanks again for coming on. I think this is a really good discussion. I'm really happy with our tier list, and
no problem.
I'm sure. I mean, I'll see you around on the server. We get games occasionally, so if you follow me over on Twitch, I'll be live on Twitch, normally scheduled time starting tomorrow. So that'll be 2 p.m. EST. We're gonna do some live gameplay, but Fouch is on there every once in a while playing, or we're playing, or I'm commentating him, or whatever. So I'm sure you'll see Fouch around the channel. But with that, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Let me know if you're watching this after the fact down in the comments what you think about the interview style, because it's something that I'd like to do a little bit more of in the future. And if you have anyone that you'd like me to get on the show and we can talk about 40k, then let me know down below.
Richard Siegler.
Richard Siegler. Yeah, I think I did reach out to Art of War a little while ago to do a talk, and I bet we could get some AOW people on. But anyway, I'll let you go, Fouch. I know it's late for you over there. So
yeah, it is 11:21.
There you go.
I am. No problem. Also, that was a pleasure speaking to everyone, and hopefully, what we talked about today definitely helped anybody who had any questions. If you have, of course, any other questions as well, feel free to message my team or message me directly. We're happy to answer any questions you may have. Outside of that, been great, Trev.
Yeah. Cheers. Have a good one.
You too. Ciao.
I'll see you around.